All right, folks, it's a cloudy day. It was actually raining earlier today, and definitely was some yucky kind of weather that was out there earlier. Hopefully, tomorrow will be a better day in that regards because it was definitely out there in the wet kind of stuff. I understand that somewhere in the north they were actually getting snow, but here in North Carolina it was just rain and definitely lots of rain. And of course, it might get colder tonight, and some of that rain may freeze and turn into ice. And I know that I am not a big fan of ice, having suffered from an injury several years back during an ice storm. So definitely try to stay safe during those ice storms and all of that, or anytime that there is icy weather out there. So definitely that is what's going on here. I just stepped outside earlier and saw that the rain looked like it had stopped, but definitely that does not mean that it won't freeze up later. That has accumulated, the water that is accumulated, and all of that. And then we'll see what tomorrow brings in that regard. So we're going to see what guests decide to come onto the online dinner party. I did do an interview earlier today with a young lady, and I may let y'all check part of that out as part of this show as we wait to see whether any of the youth that were invited to show up decide to show up on this particular edition of the online dinner party. And of course, as always, I was getting information about our mystery guests. So it's always great to have those mystery guests show up and see what they want to reveal in terms of history lessons and all of that. So I was getting some clues about our mystery guests and letting folks find out what was happening in that regard. So that is some of the things that are going on here at the online dinner party. And like I said, I do know there was a young lady from Colorado that was going to try to bring me some youth to talk about a number of youth related issues. So we'll see if that happens or we'll have to reschedule that for another time. But we're definitely looking forward to some great conversations, looking forward to some amazing guests. As always, that's one of the things we do here on International Broadcast Media is have regular and amazing conversations about a number of things that are going on. I saw that in the sports world, the CIAA has decided to call off their season on this particular academic year and all of that. Well, actually, in terms of the sport year, I shouldn't call it an academic year, but in terms of their sports year. So they have called off the basketball season in the CIAA, and they're not going to have the rest of the season now. And it looks like that's for the entire conference and all of that. And I also saw that definitely looks like some of our ACC games may be off as well because of some COVID cases and things along that line. Of course, we do know that the vaccine is out there and people are out there trying to get a little bit of the doses of the vaccine in order to figure out what's going on in their lives and in order to hopefully move forward with the way that they would like to move forward in life and all of that. So definitely we're going to hope that the vaccine is safe and that folks are able to get those doses and that hopefully in 2021 we can move back to some semblance of normality, even though we do know that with the even with the vaccines there will have to be some cautionary things that are done. And of course I've even heard recently that some of these vaccines may only last for like a year or something like that. So you may have to wind up having to take doses year after year after year. So that's just something that somebody in the medical profession had told me that they had found out about what was going on. So we're going to find out more and more as time goes on. And of course, I know that Mr. Biden has said that when he comes in office, he would like folks to mask up for, I think he said 100 days or something along those lines. We're going to see if that is the case and if that is what folks do, as they have been asked to do that now by the president elect and all of that. And by the way, the Electoral College did meet and they did make it official that he is officially the president elect according to the Electoral College, even though I understand that that person currently at 1600 is trying to even stop these election results, is trying to do some of his kind of craziness and all of that. So we're going to find out what happens in that regard. But Mitch McConnell did come out and acknowledge that Biden was the new president. So that was great to see that Mitch McConnell came out in that regards. But then I saw earlier today that, like I said, that current president at 1600 is trying to get his new attorney general to possibly launch an investigation into Hunter Biden, as well as possibly try to figure out what's going on with what he claims are voter fraud and a number of other things that he is out there purporting and trying to claim that that is what's going on, even though nobody has any proof whatsoever that that is the case. So, like I said, while he is still over there hanging on and all of that, your guess is as good as mine. But that is what is happening in the world, and we're interested to find out what folks' reaction is to that and how they take that dose of what he's saying and whether they actually believe it or whether they're just going to kind of like go along with the flow and all of that. But that is one of the things that I did see reported in the news earlier today and all of that. So definitely that was some of the things that was taking place in our world. And I know that there are a number of other things that are going on. Apparently there is a stimulus package that is being put out there and everything, and it looks like it will pass. I think it's going to have like $600 that folks are supposed to be getting in terms of like income and things of that nature. But we'll see if that is actually the case and whether it actually goes through all the steps and we get that money hopefully before Christmas. But Christmas is next week, so who knows if that's going to be the case or not the case, as it may turn out or not turn out to be, because they still have to, as the old saying goes, cross the T's and dot the I's. I believe that's the way that the phrase goes. And they definitely still have to do that. So we have a number of things that are going on in that regard. And we're going to be curious to see what happens in that lane and what goes on with that. So that's just some of the things that are going on in the world. And of course, we know that a number of other things are taking place as well. So definitely, as I said, a number of things are happening, and we're just trying to pay attention to these things as they develop and all of that. So that being said, I know that a lot of folks are definitely very much interested in a number of the things that are happening in the world. So I'm going to pull up some information about some of these things, and then I'll also possibly give y'all at least a glimpse of the interview that I did earlier today with Layla Zoe. Layla Zoe is a musician originally from Canada who now lives in the Netherlands. So I definitely always have a plan in mind as to how things can go and all of that. So I'm going to let y'all check out a little bit of who Layla Zoe is and a little bit about that particular interview that was held earlier as well. So I think that y'all will find this quite interesting, some of the things that she had to say. And then I'm also going to bring up some other facts as well. So that's some of the things that are going on in our world right now. And I know that a lot of y'all may be interested in or interested in how that is going and what these things are and how they have taken place and things along that line. Of course, we do have some great shows here on IBM TV. And of course, I want to let y'all know about some of those as well. One of those is a show that I'm always glad to be a part of on Thursday afternoons, that being The Gamers Den. So I'm going to let y'all check out a little bit of shows that I am a big fan of, bring you some information that some folks have shared with me about their thoughts, including one of my guests on an earlier show today. But right now, we're going to bring up the intro for The Gamers Den. As I was saying earlier, I had the pleasure of interviewing Travis Diener on one of the other shows, and y'all may know he played in the NBA. I know he played for Orlando, and he may have played for a couple of other teams as well. And of course, he's had some tremendous success over there in Italy. So I was actually chatting with him on Twitter as well, and he was giving me some other insights that he felt as well, other than what we talked about in the interview. So definitely I was going to share a little bit of that with you. And part of that was we were talking about Marquette, the team that he played for, and the team that is representing the school that I went to. And he was feeling that after the win that they had against Creighton, that this team is unselfish, tough, and defends. I think that this team has a chance to win games in the tournament, something I didn't think they could do the last year. And he acknowledges that Marcus Howard was a great player, but he also didn't think that he made the guys around him better and wasn't a great defender. So definitely that's one of the comments that Travis Diener was letting me know and all of that. We also talked a little bit about Doc Rivers going to Philadelphia, and I was saying that I would love to see Doc Rivers win one more championship before he retires from coaching, and that could be several years away because I still think of Doc as being a young man himself and all of that because he's in the same age range as I am. And I was also saying that I didn't think it would be bad if Jimmy Butler got a title as well. So hopefully that can happen where he's playing at and all of that. And I was letting him know that I didn't have as much concern about Marcus Howard as some people may have based on his size and all of that. But he was letting me know his thoughts as that as well. So he was saying that if Philly can make a trade, he thinks that they can have a shot at the title. He doesn't like the fact that Marcus went to Denver as they already have several 3-point guards ahead of him. So he doesn't see him playing much. And I hope that he's wrong in that regards. And we also talked a little bit about the Lakers and the Lakers being a lot of folks that folks feel will automatically get the championship again next year as well. So I was asking him whether he thought that the Lakers would repeat. And I was letting him know that I've heard a lot of people are thinking of this as a foregone conclusion. And I was also asking him whether he thought that March Madness will take place in 2021 or was he betting on 2022. And his response to me was that he thought that the Lakers were a heavy favorite. And yes, he firmly believes that March Madness will happen this season or this spring coming up. And I hope that he's absolutely right about that. As I was telling him, I was concerned because I saw that the CIAA had actually stopped their season. And I know that they're a Division II kind of thing as opposed to Division I. But I was wondering how that was going to play out and what was going to go on in that regard. So he was letting me know that in his mind, he thinks that it will happen and that it will be a 64 team amount of teams that are playing and all of that. Because I was letting him know that I was afraid that they might shorten it down and do like 16 teams and do on a neutral court. But he's of the opinion that we will get through this thing and that we will have the full 64 teams, unlike what we had last year, where we had no teams at all. Because, the March Madness did not happen. I know a lot of folks like myself, they like to do those picks, try to figure out who's going to be there and all of that. We did not have that happen this time around. So it'll be interesting to see whether he's right and whether that is actually the case or not. But right now we're going to talk about Talking Upstream, which is another show that I am a big fan And as I was saying, there are a lot of things that are going on in the world and all of that. But then there has been some great interviews that I've had the pleasure of doing and everything. And one of them was with Layla Zoe. So I'm going to bring that up right now. Let y'all check that out. That was actually done earlier this morning and everything. So y'all will check that out. Y'all will see that it was actually more of an audio interview than it was this typical video interview and all of that. So definitely we're going to bring it up and let y'all check out a little bit of what she's all about and a little bit of her background and all of that in that regard. So going to bring that up and let y'all check out what Layla Zoe is all about. And hopefully y'all will enjoy the interview that you're about to hear and all of that. But before we even get to that, we're going to let you hear her a little bit of her music and all of that. There's no need of doing the interview. And now y'all getting a feel of what she is all about in the sense of this great and talented musician. So that being said, I'm going to bring up one of her songs and everything, which is Layla Zoe performing a song that she did entitled I'd Rather Go Blind, which is a classic song that she made her own with her own style and all of that. So we're going to bring that up and let y'all hear a little bit of what she's all about. And then after that, I'll bring up the interview that I did earlier today, which I thought was a great interview. And I'm definitely looking forward to hearing y'all's reactions to the interview and things along that line. So definitely about to pull that up, let y'all check out a little bit of Layla Zoe, and then we'll come back with the interview that featured her as well. So I think that y'all will definitely enjoy the interview as well as the music of Layla Zoe, who, like I said, is currently living in the Netherlands, but is definitely originally from Canada and is now having a tremendous amount of success. But she talks a little bit about her history and all of that. So getting ready to pull up some Layla Zoe music, and then from there we'll go into the interview and hear what she's got to say about her life and everything more.
Mit einem genauso herzlichen und warmen Applaus. Layla Zoe!
Hallo! Ich bin eine Sängerin aus Kanada. That's all I know. Come back to me. I need your love so bad. Something told me you was home, baby. When I saw you and that girl, kissing slow.
like I said, that was some music from Layla Zoe, and we're definitely gonna check out a little bit of the interview with Layla Zoe. Like I said, it was more of an audio interview than the typical video interview and all of that. But we're gonna let y'all check out a little bit of what she had to say in her own words right now. So I'm going to pull up a little bit of that information as well, and I think that y'all are in for a definite treat, learning more about who she is and a little bit more about her style and all of that. So definitely going to try to see if I can find a way to pull up that information so that y'all can check that out during the course of this show as well. So here to see if I can find a way to bring that into play and everything so that y'all can check out what she's all about and her amazing style and all along those lines. Like I said, I think that y'all are in for a definite treat hearing about this artist in her own words, because she is truly a great blues musician and has a lot of very interesting things to say about the music business, about life in general, and all of that. So definitely, I think that y'all are in for a definite treat as I get ready to pull up that information that was from a interview, like I said, that was done earlier today. So looking forward to getting that to y'all and letting y'all check that out in a matter of a few minutes or so. So definitely, if y'all will hang tight and bear with me, we will definitely make that happen, and y'all will definitely enjoy this great interview that was held with her, like I said earlier this morning, during the course of this rainy day and all of that. So looking forward to letting y'all check that out and seeing what it's all about, because I think that y'all are in for a definite treat and that y'all will thoroughly enjoy the sounds that you are about to hear from Miss Layla Zoe. Like I said, she is currently living over there in the Netherlands and is calling that area home right now. So that's what she is calling home right now, is the Netherlands. So definitely looking forward to letting y'all check out a little bit of that interview and get ready to bring that up very shortly. But in the meantime, while we're waiting, we'll let you check out one of her other songs as well, because like I said, she is definitely a well-rounded musician that has done some great things in society and all of that. So I'm actually going to let y'all check out one of her later releases, or a newer release, I would put it at in that regards. I would rather go blind is her rendition of that classic song that is definitely known by a lot of folks as a song that Etta James, among others, made famous. But then she's got some new work out there as well. So we're going to let y'all check out some of the newer stuff, including this song that she's got out now called Nowhere Left to Go. And that's going to be on the latest release that is getting ready to come out and that you'll hear her talking about very shortly. But right now, we're going to let y'all check out the song that she put out entitled Nowhere Left to Go. So here to bring that up, and then I'll try to bring up the interview as well. But right now, let's check out Nowhere Left to Go.
From the fire, rage is too hot to hold. Skipping rubber wire, way down in the land below. Dying wildflowers, fuzzy scream in the air below. Where run through when there's nowhere left to go. Barbecue fire, cherry death in the twisting sky. Screaming and crying, the man in red cannot tell a lie. Horses running blinded, burning feathers fall in a row. laughing like a sugar cane toad. What a saber fighter, kookaburra laughing low. Yeah, where will we run to when there's nowhere left to go? I cannot breathe. I cannot see the ground below. Where will we run to when there's nowhere left to go? Where will we run to? Run to? Where will we run to when there's nowhere left to go? When there's nowhere left to go. When there's nowhere left to go. When there's nowhere left to go.
And as I was saying, there is definitely places left to go, even here on the online dinner party. We'll be revealing some clues for our mystery guests in a little bit and everything. But definitely, I did want y'all to check out the interview that I did earlier and all of that. So definitely going to pull that up right now. And like I said, a lot of this is going to be more audio, so y'all will actually be hearing more of my face in terms of what's going on. But you will hear her voice and hear what she's got going on as well. So definitely, if y'all get a chance, y'all will definitely enjoy this. And like I said, I may come in between and bring in some other comments as well. But right now, let's check out what she's got to say about her own music and her own life. So right now, this is Layla Zoe in her own words. So let's check out what Layla Zoe is all about. About her musical career and all of that. So definitely looking forward to a lovely conversation with Layla Zoe, who has worked with a number of great musicians and all of that. So definitely has a rich music career of her own, as well as having worked with a number of legends in the blues community. But I would also consider her a legend as well. So we're very much glad to have her into this conversation and to learn more about her new release and what she's got going on. So, Layla, very good to have you on and everything. So, if you'll tell folks that are listening on the international side, and I know that you're over there in the Netherlands now, but you've traveled all over the world and everything. So, if you just tell a little bit of folks about how you got involved in blues music and all of that, and then we'll just have a series of questions after that. But I know I am a big fan of the blues, having had my parents start a jazz radio station back in the mid to late 70s that lasted for about 10 to 15 years, and having been a blues DJ for a few stations here in North Carolina. So blues has always been a music form that has been dear to my heart. So I was just curious to learn more about how you got involved in this great musical form of blues and who some of your folks that inspired you have been. So I guess that's where we'll start off from, is a little bit of the history of Layla Zoe and how you got involved in the world of blues.
Well, that was an intro, and I liked it. First of all, thank you for saying such kind things. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I grew up with my mother and father until they separated, and then I ended up living with my dad for a while until I left home when I was quite young. But my dad had a great record collection and really loved the blues. Of course, back then there was tape cassettes too, so we would throw on a tape cassette during dinner. And I remember listening to artists like Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Billie Holiday, Sarah Vaughan. And so my dad obviously had a big part in introducing me to a lot of great music when I was young. And of course, at some point, lots of, kids reach the teen years, and then they're sort of not maybe interested or in fact even reject the music that their parents have played for them. But I always really loved the stuff that my dad had in his record collection. So then I just got more deeply into a lot of that music, like Frank Zappa and Joni Mitchell and Neil Young and Tom Waits and all these other wonderful artists that my dad introduced me to. When I was 15, I sang with my dad's band for a short time. He was doing it as a hobby at that point. He'd had a bit of a time in music, some different bands, and also working as a roadie for a while. That was, sort of behind him at that point. He was at that time doing some training with dogs, obedience training and stuff for the police with dogs, and doing a totally different job. But, you know, he had still this love for music. And so I sang with his band, and we did some shows in Vancouver when I was, 15, which meant I could only come out from the green room to do the songs and then go straight back there, because I was underage and wasn't, really allowed in the bars at the time. But that was a good experience. I also sang in school musicals and kind of from a young age enjoyed singing. I also was writing from a very young age, writing short stories and poetry, which came into play later when I started, using a lot of that for my songwriting. And I also released a self-published book of poetry in 2010. So that was also something that I'd always wanted to do, which I finally got around to then. But as far as the blues, I mean, I sang in bar bands and did all, a real range of stuff, top 40. But the music that I loved to sing the most when I was in the bar band kind of showed me the stuff I felt the most strongly about, was the blues stuff. I felt that I could really emotionally connect with the audience, and that my voice obviously naturally had a certain timbre and a certain power to it that worked well with the blues, the blues rock stuff. So originally, was singing covers, and then that helped me to get confident enough after being in the bar band for several years to then start writing my own stuff. And I released my first album in 2005, and that had only a few blues songs. I actually took a songwriting trip in Nashville and met some songwriters there and co-wrote with some people there. And that was a really good experience for me. But that has only 5 songs. It's an EP, so it has quite a mix. But at that point was when I realized clearly that I wanted to go more in the blues rock vein for sure. And that's pretty much every album after that, was clearly in that, I guess if you say genre, but these days genres don't matter anymore, because, you look at music and it's labeled like surf pop, melancholy, dream or something. And you're just like, what, so I don't know if the genre, itself is as important to mention as just the heart connection to the music. And on my albums, there's always a bit of a mix, and that there can be blues folk, blues jazz, blues rock, but definitely over the years, it's been more of a modern take on the blues, my stuff, which has meant that at times I've been overlooked for certain opportunities because I don't really maybe appeal always to blues traditionalists. But on the other hand, I've also, have a repertoire of those classic songs and turning them to have a little bit more of my nickname, the Fire Girl edge to them. So like Hoochie Coochie Man, I did for years, like Hoochie Coochie Woman, and people always love that. So my love for the blues, it includes traditional blues, but also more modern takes on the blues. So I still feel strongly to call myself a blues vocalist, even though I sing a range of different styles. And of course, there's been people that have said, oh, you shouldn't do that anymore. You should, give yourself more opportunity by not calling yourself a blues singer. And I still can't help but do that, because I still feel really strongly about blues and the emotional capability that music has when you're connecting with people, because there's a certain sadness and grief in the music, but also a hopefulness, which if you read about blues history, you definitely learn that most of the songs are being written under difficult circumstances, but with a feeling of hope. And that's the reason for the music in a lot of ways. So I still resonate deeply with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I can understand that. And you've also had the pleasure of working with some great blues artists, as I mentioned earlier. I know that my good friend Mel Melton has also had the pleasure of working with Sonny Landreth, as well as you've also worked with Susan Tateshi, as well as the late, great Jeff Healey. So what was that like, connecting with those other legends of the blues early in your career and everything along those lines? Because like I said, you definitely had the pleasure of working with some folks that would be considered part of the blues trajectory of legends.
Yeah, I feel really blessed on those opportunities that I had. Sonny Landreth and I are really good friends, so we stay in touch, and we met at a festival years ago in Nova Scotia in Canada, which was funny. And we just were talking backstage, him and his band and I, and we were just having a lot of laughs. And so we ended up, I think they just thought I was this crazy, funny, red-headed Canadian girl with all the tattoos. And then they heard me sing. And so it was just, since then we've stayed in touch, and I've had the opportunity to sing with Sonny a few times on stage too, at Rock Palast in Germany when he was performing there, and also a big festival in Belgium when he was visiting, when he and I and Anna Popovic got up and did a version of Walkin' Blues, which you can find on YouTube. But, Sonny's such a great guy, like just really down to earth and a wonderful person. His style is so unique. So I feel really lucky that I've had the chance to connect with him, but also just for his friendship. I remember even losing my voice during the end of a long, row of gigs when I was at a festival in Tremblant, Quebec, which is quite a well-known one in Canada and is really cool festival. And just, getting in touch with him, and he was giving me some tips back then. And that was before I ever had like a major issue with my voice, when then I saw a doctor who gave me more tips on what you need to do. But he was giving me the suggestion of, steaming my throat in the hotel room when I got back later, using the kettle that was in the hotel room, and so like, it's wonderful when you have friends that are in the business that can give you the positive feedback that you need sometimes when you also hit low points, and that can relate, and that are just real people too, because there's a lot of artificial behavior in the music business. But luckily, I've met some really cool people. And Jeff Healey, that's a fantastic experience that I'll never forget, and definitely some of the biggest electricity that I've ever felt on stage. I mean, Jeff had this amazing power, and I remember just feeling the whole like air in the room change when he started playing. So I was really lucky. Unfortunately, he was going through his cancer treatments at that time, and I performed with him twice at his club in Toronto when I was living there. He was also so funny and would make so many jokes, and just a great guy. But of course, he would be telling us a little bit about the treatments that he just had when he would show up at the bar later. And sometimes you could tell he wasn't feeling that well. And in the end, he was gone not long after we had that opportunity, those couple opportunities. But he said some really kind things, and he was just a great guy. So I was really feeling lucky on that experience that I had with him. And it's definitely something I'll never forget. With Susan, I knew Derek for long, quite a while before I got a chance to meet Susan finally. And then I was close friends with Kofi Burbridge and a few of the other guys in the band. I actually had some fun with those guys a few times, drinking a little bit too much and having some laughs. But when I met Susan, I think I'd met her a couple times before we got a chance to sing together. But then I just was asking her, because I was doing this gospel video series. And so I asked her if she'd like to sing on the gospel song a cappella with me. And we were in Frankfurt, Germany. I think it was Frankfurt. And they were doing a show. So sometime after the show, when we were all hanging out, having some drinks, I pulled her aside and asked her if she'd like to sing for, I think it was video number 50 or something, because I thought it would be cool to, have like a special guest for halfway through. Cause I did 100 videos. So that was like the halfway point. And I was like, oh, I'm going to give people something good. So then I asked Susan if she wanted to sing some gospel. So I just taught her the song on the street, and we sang together and filmed it with my cell phone. But so I wouldn't really say we exactly worked together, but we certainly had fun. And they're also really down to earth, wonderful people. So, and they deserve their success. They're all incredibly talented. And I was really heartbroken when Kofi passed away, because we were very good friends. And anytime they were in town, I would, come and see the show and see Kofi. But I also knew that he had some struggles with his health. So I was aware. I spoke to him only a few days before he died, and he let me know that he was doing okay, and that he said, I've just got to get through this, so he was definitely trying to, stay positive up until the end. I don't know if he really knew how bad things were for him or not, but he, tried to ease my concerns anyways. So, but then the road takes lots of wonderful people. And this year too, I wonder if there won't be more coming up in the next few years that we'll see, because of the incredible pressure and situation that musicians are under now.
Yeah, definitely. Musicians are under a lot of pressure and everything of that nature, and we'll definitely get into a little bit of that as well. But even before getting into that, a lot of times blues music and roots music in general is more accepted overseas than it appears to be here in the States. And I just wondering your thoughts on that as to why that is. You're currently living in the Netherlands. Of course, you were born in Canada and have lived around the world. But I know a lot of times when I talk to musicians, they're always talking about the fact that they feel that that particular genre of music is more accepted in, say, a Japan or in India or a Germany than it is here in the States. And some of that may be because the fact that a lot of the radio stations are run by corporate mammoth kind of institutions that don't necessarily give the blues the kind of respect that I feel that it deserves. But I was just wondering your thoughts on why it's more accepted overseas than it is in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I've seen is just that, say, the difference between like Toronto and Germany when I was living in Toronto, where there was a lot of live music happening, but unfortunately there was less and less blues and jazz focused clubs, because Toronto used to be a real jazz town even. And then it kind of came down to there was only a few places left that you could go see live jazz during any day of the week in Toronto. But that's a big difference between what I've seen in Canada, say cities like Vancouver, Toronto, or Montreal, and you know, Germany when I was living there before I came to the Netherlands, is that you'll find music any day of the week and there will be people there. And now whether that means that the people as a whole just are less on the television and on their computers and are more interested in going out and see live music, or like you said, that it's just not getting the support or promotion that it deserves. I don't know. I just know that, you know, if you went into a venue on Queen Street in Toronto, unless the artist is known, there's a good chance there wouldn't be too many people there on a Monday night. And in Germany, I would have fans come on a Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, whatever. It didn't matter, you know, start of the week. If I do a tour and I have a show on a Monday or Tuesday, of course, it's not like a Friday or Saturday, but still you get a good crowd. So I think also there was just so many more venues and festivals and open air small festivals to play at in countries like Germany. And then everything's closer together too. So that makes a huge difference. If you're trying to go across Canada, the distances are obviously much further. And in Germany, I can go Germany, Holland, Belgium, you know, Luxembourg, Switzerland, Austria, Czech Republic, and then head back and hit, you know, so I can hit a lot of countries in the same amount of time it would take me to cross Canada. And so for this reason too, I can see how some artists would say that there was more support, mostly also because there's just more venues, more places to play. And then I don't know about the blues radio thing, because I find that both America, Canada, and Europe have all supported me with blues radio. There's lots of people doing like blues shows on university radio in America and Canada. And when I toured in the States, it's tough because I only did that once with a record label supporting it. And some places really there was nobody there for me and the girls that were, it was the Roof's Blues Caravan. So Roof Records, which is a German label, but they definitely have many American artists. Like he had Samantha Fish until recently and Mike Zito. And so there's lots of well-known blues artists from the States that have also worked with him and signed with his label at times. But I was on tour with Tasha Taylor and Ina Forsman. Tasha's American and Ina's from Finland. And the show is a really good show. But, you know, some of the festivals we played and some of the clubs, there was lots of people, and others there was very few people. So again, you don't know if it's just due to promotion or the fact that, you know, and also CD sales was not the same as if you're playing a tour in Europe, where you often have the fans come up and buy merchandise afterwards. And in the United States, I found, except at the festivals, that some of the clubs, people were more focused on buying drinks than they were on buying a CD from one of the artists after the show. So that's a tough one. I don't know, you know, all the reasons why North America is so different in some parts, you know, but I mean, definitely I find that it's sometimes more difficult to get support in your own backyard. Sometimes you're more exotic in someone else's. And so to be a Canadian blues singer and to have broken through into Germany, which then evolved into many other countries accepting what I was doing, was really a wonderful thing, because I would not be able to have a career that had been as illustrious, you know, if I'd stayed in Canada. For sure, that would not have happened, because I was able to do lots of bar gigs where you work very hard for like $100 And then it evolved into some festivals in Canada, which obviously then you're going to get a hotel, you're going to get better pay, you're going to get better opportunities, you're maybe going to sell a whack of CDs. But once you've done some of those events, you're not going to be maybe coming back every year after that to that same event. And there's only so many in Canada. So at some point you're going to be stuck maybe just doing this regular bar gig kind of jam or something like this. And the money's just not going to be enough for you to survive alone on music.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of survival, a lot of people, because of what's going on with the pandemic and everything else, are not getting as many musical gigs as they would like. I know I've got a good friend that is a funk musician here in the area. He's hoping to release his new album, and the new album with them hopefully lead to gigs and all of that. But right now he's struggling driving Uber and doing a number of other things to survive while he's trying to, wait for the vaccine and everything else to open up the bars and the gigs and everything along that line. So how are you surviving as a musician when we're in the middle of this crazy pandemic that we're in the middle of, and how are you able to get out there and do performances, or are you able to do any performances at this particular moment that we're in?
Yeah, so I haven't done any gigs at all since things started. I was on tour when it was starting, and we managed to do most of the shows. I think there was only 4 gigs canceled, one in Austria and a few in Germany in certain towns where they were already kind of going into lockdown.
Right.
And yeah, that was a very stressful time, just because at the end of the tour it was kind of unclear what was actually going on, and then it was like, is anybody going to be unsafe to do a show in a smaller venue with people nearby? And so when I came off tour, I just had to kind of take some time to research a bit more to get my head clear about what was going on. And then just for myself and the kind of music that I do and the kind of connection that I have with my fans when they come to see my live performances, I don't think that my music in the way that I perform translates easily through streaming concerts, etc. And so I did not try to do that this year. My main focus became at that point to make this record that I managed to crowdfund still under circumstances that were obviously more difficult, but I was really lucky with my fans knowing from other times I've crowdfunded that I would give them a really high quality piece of art by the end of it. I had to make some changes with how I made the record because of the lockdowns and because of the musicians not being able to get together in the studio. But in the end, that became my number one focus, was just to make an album and to release it, because I knew right now that it was very complicated with trying to do any kind of shows anywhere without losing money. And then also some of my musicians are in Germany, so it was like, also, would we even be able to get together to drive somewhere and do a show? And then the streaming thing, I just decided against it for now. Now, maybe next year I will do it, because we have a tour booked in the spring of next year, which my agent is also suggesting we move to 2022. And so we've reserved some spots to be able to move it if that's the case, which it kind of does look like is probably going to be necessary, because the thing is, when I do a tour, I will have some big fixed fees from certain shows, most likely, which will help me with some of the venues that are paying less. But say if I'm playing in Budapest and Romania and, Bratislava or something, obviously those countries, the gigs will pay less, than some of the venues in Germany. But overall, because of that, I'm working with door deals on, say, 3/4 of the tour. In a situation like this, if you've got a venue where there was 150 people before and it's 30 now, or if you've got a venue that was more and it's down to 100 or whatever, you need to cover your expenses, and it's very difficult to do that right now. So I could try to tour, but I can't really afford to lose money. It's also not something I want to do after how many years I put into touring, and like that there's an organization to it in a way that we do it to be able to at least break even, if not make some money. And I make my money mostly from merchandise, obviously not from the shows themselves, but I pay my musicians properly and my tour manager, and of course have to rent a sprinter and all those things. So for me, it didn't make sense to try to do a tour yet, and also you have to remember that people are really scared So how many people are going to show up, even if you are able to go against all odds and make something happen, so maybe next year I'm going to look at doing maybe one ticketed concert live stream thing or something. But then again, I want to do it at a quality level that makes sense, which means I would need to rent a proper place. I would need to pay my musicians. I would need to get someone to film that and it to be quality sound and quality, footage, for it to even come close to translate a little bit of the emotional connection, with the people that are watching. So it's a tough one. I feel like I'm lucky because my husband did not lose his job. And so right now he's been able to support me. I had a little bit of money saved, which is rare, but for musicians, but
Yeah.
I had something that's helped me, and then I released the record and there's been some sales, although most sales go through the distribution company. And of course, then that means that money that is owed goes back. It's always like the same thing. Either it's a label or a distribution company that you're kind of always in the hole to dig yourself out.
Right.
So you keep making records to pay off the last record or however it goes. But I luckily have a partner that is still working. So that has made a big difference. But I definitely have considered, what it's going to look like if I don't see sort of things get back to not normal, because I don't think they'll ever go back to the way that they were, but to something where I can still, make a living in this career. If not, that I'll have to look for other work. And that is a strange thing after you invest so many years into it and have sacrificed so much and moved so many times and done everything you can to create this. And so that's a difficult realization, but I really feel strongly that people need to, be realistic with themselves right now, because my main thing when I've been asked about it a few times in interviews is if a quote unquote virus can come now and everything will shut down, then how can you not know that maybe in 2 years the same thing could happen again and that the virus is stronger this next time? So it makes me feel like clearer about the business that I already knew was a difficult one that I was in, but that our jobs, unfortunately, even though we know that many people depend on that music and that our fan bases are super excited to hear the new music when it comes and they absolutely love and are grateful for that, that really our jobs in the bigger picture of things, unfortunately, kind of become disposable at a time like this, right? And so for that reason, I think we should never stop being creative and we should never stop making music, but that we need to be realistic about this point in history that's teaching us something about kind of where do our jobs fit in a circumstance like this.
That makes a lot of sense. And you earlier talked about the fact that the album was recorded with a lot of both you and your other musicians recording from your homes and private studios and then mixed and mastered by Niels Volker and all of that. But that being said, I know that even when I've talked to other musicians friends, like my friend that does funk music and a number of others, they're oftentimes feeling that they can't get the kind of quality that they would like in those kind of like recordings where people are scattered around. And some of them are very particular about the way that they like their sound and everything. So how were you able to manage to do that and create the kind of sound that you would like? Because I know that even some of my friends that have thought about this, because I said, like, I know of one case where the musician is in North Carolina and some of the musicians are scattered in other parts of the United States. They may not be scattered in other parts of the world, but they're definitely scattered in other parts of the United States, but they feel that they can't get the kind of quality that they would like. But it sounds like you did get the quality that you would like in this latest album and everything. So what would your advice be for folks that are trying to create these albums in this new situation that we exist in, where, like I said, one musician may be in New York and one may be in Dallas, and that's just an example.
Yeah, I just feel like, the intention needs to be there that you're going to create something and you're going to create it under whatever circumstances you're faced with. And we already know that musicians are very good at adapting on tour to all kinds of strange circumstances. And so it felt, again, just like I was being asked to adapt to something. And I guess I've just gotten good at that over the years. So when I realized that the musicians couldn't all go into the studio together, and also that I couldn't afford that was also a part of it. After coming off the tour and some shows being canceled and that affecting the overall outcome financially of that tour, which was going to help me to bring everyone into the studio. that then I thought, I'm going to ask the musicians I know that I would like to also help, who I know deserve, some support, and who have good home studios, who I knew had worked from their home studios before. The drummer had worked with me on the Gemini record. The bass player I knew had made albums for his own musical project from home that I had heard that sounded great, etc. It was sort of just like, let's see what happens, and that's exactly what I did, because there is no, there's no play-by-play book of how to even put something like that together. I had never done it before. So I just had to kind of have a bit of faith in the people that I'd worked with over the years. The people that I ended up co-writing with, which was 7 different co-writers, I had written to lots of different people that I'd worked with saying, hey, if you've got some demos and you want to try writing together, send me something. And it just happened that the people that did get back to me and the songs that we wrote were strong. And then I asked those same people if they all wanted to play on the record too. And everybody said yes. And luckily everybody did have sort of a home studio setup, or the few people that recorded from studios knew someone that would let them come in and record for free, or let them use the studio or help them, because we were all sort of just contributing in the ways that we could. And then of course that meant that there was some pretty serious work to be done by the engineer and myself, because I had some problems with a few of the songs where they just didn't sound right. So it took us a lot of work, and for a little while I was worried about the album being really behind schedule, but then the tour that it was sort of supposed to be promoting isn't maybe even happening in the time frame that it was originally supposed to anyway. So then it was like, okay, who cares? But definitely it was a bit behind schedule because there was definitely some technical stuff that took time, but I think that, it's difficult because with this kind of music too, it's not like, pop music where you're going to put a lot of maybe effect and you can really alter it. There still has to be the heart to it, like you said.
Right.
There still has, and especially a certain rawness with what you're expressing. And I think I just lucked out, and everybody that came together was committed to do the best they could from their ends. And so then we put it together, and we worked hard to make it sound as good as we could. And then I put my voice on it, and in the end, I really had a lot of fun working on this album. And I'm really grateful to all the songwriters who came together and played. And it's been getting really good reviews. So I felt really good about that, just because it's been a while since I self-produced. I self-produced some of my really earlier stuff, but it had been a long time since I hadn't had a producer that I was working with. So that was nerve-wracking for me. And I also had a bigger part in deciding with the final mixing, which was also a bit nerve-wracking for me, because often I would come in the studio and sing my parts and someone else was handling that. So of course I would listen to everything and say if I really hated something. But this was a much more in-depth process for me to be involved with the mixing at the end. So I had to trust my ears, and everybody so far has been quite happy with the end result. So that makes me feel really good.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a great project. Now, you're talking about the importance of music, particularly in this day and time that we're living in and everything with the pandemic. But there's also been a lot of other things that people have been going through, whether that's economic crisis, whether that's like crisis around race relations and things of that nature. And I know that a couple of good friends have talked about the importance of music as a healing tool. So even though it may not feel like musicians are all that important in the grander scheme of things, they were talking about how music is the great unifying factor. Like, you don't care about red and blue if you're in the States, meaning the United States and everything. You don't necessarily care whether the person is black or white, gay or straight, or a number of other things.
That's right.
You're hearing great music and all of that. It seems to conquer a lot of the divides that we have, not just in the country of the United States, but in the world. So I would love it if you could talk about that importance to you of unifying people through your music, and whether you think that that is a true statement. Because I've heard that from a couple of musicians, that they feel that music is kind of like one of the great unifiers.
Oh, I definitely agree with that completely. When I'm talking about, being realistic about the situation this year, it's more just that you can see that the touring could stop suddenly, and that the audience themselves would be put into awkward circumstances, facing fears, being masked, socially distancing. And obviously when you're at a concert, we're used to being close together and shoulder to shoulder if we're in the audience. And there's a certain energy flow in being close to people and feeling something together. When they're 1.5 meters or whatever apart, the energy changes. And actually, I attended church with my sister in Canada when I was visiting there earlier this year. I was able to go back in the summer, which was really a trip because the airports were like empty. It was like a ghost town in the Vancouver airport. I felt like I was the only person traveling. And there was like, 1/3 of the people on the airplane than normal, which makes it more comfortable with all those seats next to you. But it was a weird thing. But anyway, she was attending a local community church. And so I went with her one day and they were singing. And it was really wonderful to see people singing together. But of course, it was so different because there was such a small number of people needing to be distanced. You had to register to come to the church. And she said, oh, I wish you could have seen it before, like when the room was full and we were all singing together, because that is what I meant more, is just the circumstances. But from what you're saying, sorry, to get back on track, yeah. I completely agree. And, there was many experiences I've had over the time from when I was singing in the bar band, when I was younger in my 20s, doing cover songs, to now, when I could tell that someone was judging me before hearing me sing, and after hearing me sing was like inviting me back to their house to have drinks with their family, So it's like music obviously tears down walls of judgment and perception on so many levels. And I think that that's another reason that I love it so much, because it is its own language, If you hear my dog barking in the background, sorry, there he gets a little growly if there's if somebody's walking outside. He's definitely always protecting me. So actually, I have 2 dogs, but one of them is the more outspoken one. So
that's no problem at all. Actually, on one of the interviews that I did on the streaming podcast and everything, the young lady that I was interviewing, and she's actually been interviewed a couple of times because she's somewhat of an activist here in the Durham community, had her bird interrupt the interview. And, and we just decided after the second time or the third time of the bird interrupting that the bird wanted to get its time in the sun as well. So the bird was in there going like, no, we do not care that the missus is being interviewed. If I don't get my time, then I'm going to disturb the interview. So they did that on a couple of times. So I know, and actually even though I don't have any animals currently right now, I definitely have had pets in the past and definitely have a great deal of respect for pet owners. And my younger brother has a dog, and actually the dog from that same litter was given to mom. So mom hasn't had a dog probably in about, I would imagine probably 15 or 20 years, if not longer than that. So she's now getting used to having a grandparent niece, which is not exactly a small dog. I think it's already like 65 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
And will get to be like 130 at some point. So it's already a very big dog that she's trying to adapt to having at the age of late 70s. I think she's like.
Well, I just did an interview the other day, and I told the same thing to the guy, and he said, "Oh, it's how much more blues can it get if the dog's like barking and howling in the background?"
Exactly.
But one comment on that just made me think about, in my opinion too, it's not that it's all negative or pessimistic. There's been some really wonderful things that have come out of this year. I feel like people have also had to open up to new ideas. Maybe they've allowed themselves things that they never would have before. Maybe they are being reborn, like, the phoenix rising from the ashes, and we'll see some really wonderful things. And I feel like, that ability to adapt, that ability to be reborn comes more easily even sometimes for some artists and musicians than it does for others. So I think that it's a special time. I know that I never would have allowed myself to have pets prior to this year. And that's actually when I got my dogs, was this year, because it was the first time when I said, okay, like if I don't have any gigs and I can't tour, now I can allow myself to have the pets, and I will take them on tour if it comes up that I'm touring again in another year or two, and they're smaller dogs for that reason. But, it was the first time I sort of allowed myself to, step back from my career and go, what about the other things that you want? Sometimes in music, just for myself, you have to give it 100% to get to those opportunities and for those doors to open. Of course, one door closes, another door opens, but you just can't give up. And so it wasn't a feeling of giving up, but it was a feeling of like stepping back and going, you've been sacrificing your friendships and your family in many ways. You've had to, at times, sacrifice relationships. You've had to sacrifice, say, maybe wanting, pets or a family or whatever. And now might be the time to step back and go like, okay, if this is not happening right now, then what about the other things that I want, and yet still be able to make music and to release a record and make sure that my fan base has some new music that makes them, like you said, feel some healing vibes, and still work with people, but just do it from in long distance in a way, using the amazing technologies that we have now. So I feel like it's also a year for people to, try new things and maybe change their perception a bit, because I feel too that some of the people I knew that were hanging on really tight to try to force it to be what it was before, it's not going to be that. It's going to be something else. So you've got to try to, not just flow with it or anything. You've got to still have your own feelings, thoughts, opinion, and you've got to swim, but let go a little sometimes, because that is going to kill you otherwise,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, the previous album was called a Gemini album, and I know that both of my parents are Gemini, so I was wondering, was it named after the sun sign Gemini, or was it named after another reason? And if so, why did you come up with that particular name? Was it something about being a Gemini, if you're a Gemini, that has influenced your music and everything? So I was curious as to the naming of the album.
Okay. Well, the last record is actually called Retrospective Tour 2019. That's a live double album that I released. So that's the last record before the new one, the studio album. But the last studio album, yes, is called Gemini. And it's 2 discs. One is called Courage and one is called Fragility. And I am a Gemini. I feel strongly. I mean, I guess one of the first questions I ask people, it's like, it's like, what sign are you? I know it's so cliche, and I'm not even born, in the 50s, 60s, I didn't even grow up in the right era to maybe even be asking that question, but I've always kind of resonated with that time period and with the music from that time. So either way, I really see myself in that light of these 2 different personalities, sometimes even more than 2 personalities, in fact. But there's this big, loud rock voice, that obviously people hear on stage. And then over the years, thanks to the help of some producers I worked with when I was younger, the softer voice, which I became more in touch with and started to like more, because I know originally when I would sing with the soft voice, I always thought it sounded terrible. And I'd say, oh no, I wanted to use the big voice because it was what, was kind of became easily. And so when I was pushed by producers I worked with to work more on the soft voice and how it would affect the audience by using both, I learned a lot. And that, luckily, by the time I went to make that record, because it was a concept album I wanted to make many times, and a couple of the labels I spoke to about it didn't, wasn't of interest to them. It looked like too big of a project maybe or something. So I made that record with the guitar player that I'd worked with for a long time. And so he was also a Gemini, and we made it at his home studio. Most of it was done there. And so we could afford to, do 20 songs and to, take our time and do lots of pre-production. And both of our hearts were really in the making of that record. So I think that's one of the best records I've made, and I'm quite proud of it. And that album does show those 2 sides of the personality on stage, but also maybe the personality that we all have, in that sometimes you feel like listening to this loud, hard, rough, maybe somebody's even swearing a few times, in the song's music. And then this other side, when sometimes we wake up, and it's a rainy morning and we want to listen to like kind of Blue Miles Davis, like we want to listen to something a little bit more gentle for, the listening. And so that was the other side where I sang, more subdued, but like also some beautiful lyrics on the record. So I feel good about that album. And yes, it was definitely demonstrating the Gemini sides of my personality on and off stage.
No, it sounds great. And like I said, both of my parents are Gemini, so I was born in a double Gemini house. And when my younger brother came along, he was born as a Scorpio. So as I like to jokingly said, I had a fiery personality in my brother, and I never knew which side my parents were coming on, because it wasn't just one Gemini, it was 2 Geminis in the household. So you
had like 4 parents.
Yes, basically. Like which combination were you getting today and everything? So like I said, it's all the combination of that particular day. So that was definitely something different to grow up in that kind of environment. Now, you mentioned earlier that your significant other, husband, and everything isn't in the music field. Do you think that that has helped you, or and been a thing that you have enjoyed? Because I know some folks that are in relationships and their spouses are somehow in the entertainment field. But then I know, like even my good friend Ronnie Warner, who is a filmmaker, I think his wife is totally in something that has nothing whatsoever to do with the film industry. And I think that in some ways that probably grounds him and everything. So I was wondering, is that what you find in your relationship, not having somebody in the entertainment business, or is he just in another aspect of the entertainment business?
Yeah, I mean, because, excuse me, because I dated, obviously, lots of musicians over the years, I would say that for my own personal circumstances over the years, that it's been more stable, a more grounded relationship when I've been with people that were outside of the business. And there's a lot I could say on that, but I think that generally it's just nice to come home and talk to someone about something else sometimes than what you're doing all the time, because you are putting so much energy, especially if you're independent. And even when you're not independent, even with a label, you're always like trying to promote the music and connecting with people and entering songs into some blues songwriting company. I mean, off the road, you're still doing so much, and it's often all you're thinking about, or for me it was anyways. And so it's nice to be with someone that kind of has a really different kind of work and something else to talk about. And my husband is he's a diver, but he does like industrial diving. So they do construction underwater basically. And so it's a very different job than what I do. Although there's aspects of bravery and creativity in it, it's different than what I do, but I really am like amazed by what he does. Right. And then sometimes he'll just come home and start telling me, what they did. And I don't really fully understand it. I just am normally saying like, is it dangerous? And of course he says it's never dangerous, but of course it is. But, and the thing is, I really think that it just comes down to no matter what he was doing for a living, that we were the right two people for each other when we connected. At the time we connected, and where I was living in Germany. He was working in Holland and happened to be in Germany at a concert, not my concert, but a concert of a songwriter named Ryan Bingham, actually, who's from the United States. And he was doing a little like solo tour, and we met there, and the rest is history. So, but yeah, for myself, it's worked better. And I've definitely seen lots of musicians where it has worked for them, that the person has a more stable or consistent job. That can sometimes help when there's financial moments where it's low, for a musician, but not just on that end, but also just when it comes to a certain stability, just in the personality type of people that do jobs, say like construction or school teacher or a nurse. I've had musician friends that, a bass player for a while that was with a nurse. I've had, a couple musicians I know that were with teachers, and I think that, it does also obviously work for people. If you look at like Derek Trucks and Susan, like obviously it works great. They can tour together, they can play to, write songs together. And so there's a beautiful thing about that. But for myself, this has been the most supportive partner that I've had in many years of what I do, so.
It sounds like you've got a situation similar to what Dolly Parton has with her husband, because I don't even know quite sure what Dolly's husband does, but I know he has nothing whatsoever to do with the music industry, and apparently they've been married for like, multiple decades and everything. But I know that, I think I read an interview somewhere where they mentioned what he did, but I know it had nothing whatsoever to do with the whole entertainment field, and it definitely seems to have worked for them, even though I think in the last interview that I heard that she did, she was basically saying that after these many decades that they were basically sick of each other now at this particular point and everything, just because they've been together so long. So she did make that joke that she was, that they're at that point of maybe knowing each other too well, if that is such a case or anything along that line. Now, for folks go ahead.
Frank Zappa said, the reason Gail and I get along so well is because we never see each other. I think that on some level too, if you're, away and you're touring, obviously, you appreciate seeing the person more. And so we always had a really good thing going with that too, where I would be away and he also worked away sometimes in other countries. And so obviously, the last few years, or especially this year, it's really changed. But then that can also be a good thing because you realize, okay, we can be together more often. We can't, I mean, he works quite long days, but we can see each other more than normal and we can get through it. But then we've only been recently married. So we'll see what we're saying in 20 years or 10 years or whatever. Like Dolly, I mean, they've been together so long, but one thing I really respect about how she handled it too, is that I also don't, put up photos of him he's come to shows and fans probably realized, oh, who's this guy that's going backstage or whatever, or who's carrying Layla's suitcase out the door when she leaves or whatever. But I try to have a little bit of separation between my private life and my career so that my family and my partner are protected,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. Now, you had also talked about being an independent artist, and I know a lot of times folks who are in the music business, they decide to go the independent route. Definitely a number of blues artists decide to go that route, but then there's some that decide to go to the label route, whether that's in the blues field, going to Alligator or Rounder or one of those other labels, or whether that's going to the big labels that have multiple styles of music like CBS and a number of other labels that are out there in that category. But what do you think is the benefit in your mind to being an independent artist versus going the label route or going like that strong label route?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. Yeah, I mean, there's the financial side of it. Obviously, some labels I had better arrangements with than others. Some I don't see any royalties still after selling a lot of records because it wasn't a very good record contract. And yet that label might have promoted me and helped me do some things I never could have done on my own or at that particular time in my career. I also worked with a label that was really supportive creatively and who I did really appreciate helping my growth as an artist on so many levels. I was independent prior to working with labels, so at least I had a lot of experience with that, which helped me then when I decided it was time to take a step back and go independent again. I think that like big labels is a thing of the past. I think it's all smaller labels now that we see having success with fantastic artists. I've just heard so many stories of people signing, like say with Sony or something, and then just not getting the support they deserve because they just have too many artists. It's like when you sign with an agency that has like 50 artists, you're maybe lucky if you get a couple gigs out of them a year. You want an agent that has very few artists that is focused in on those artists and what they do, So I feel like, smaller labels and independent is really the way everybody's doing it now. Anyways. But I mean, obviously it's a lot of work, the promotion side of it. If you're running your own label, if you don't really have the money to pay other people to help with that part of it, that's a tremendous amount of work, which I've done myself on the last 3 releases, which at some point you kind of have a strong mailing list and you have strong connections and you have people that have enjoyed your albums and interviews with you. So you can go back to them and automatically right away, they're going to say yes. So it's about, how long you do it for and your social relationships with people, I guess, but that is definitely something that is difficult if you're independent, because then you're writing the music, you're recording the music, normally you're touring the music, you're also trying to promote the releases, and there's so much involved with that. So I'd say that's one thing I miss from being with a label, especially if it is a label that actually does what they say they're going to do and has a good promotions team. That's a big amount of work that can fall on the label instead of on the artist, and then the artist can focus more on the creativity of making the next album or writing the songs for the next record. So it's like a gentle balance that I have to find to be able to do it all. But I also feel good about that after some of the experiences I've had, that it was time. And also I think that at some point I might look for a label again. I just saw, I think it was on Facebook today, that Eric Bibb just signed with a label. I'm trying to think of who it was. Oh, I can't remember now, but I think they just announced it. And I thought, how wonderful that, in the year 2020, there's actually been some really fantastic things happening still for music. I've seen a lot of musicians push themselves even further. I've seen, just like creativity on these amazing levels, and like Jackie Venson, who co-wrote on one of the songs with me, she's in Austin, and I'm pretty sure it's Austin, yeah, or Texas, yeah. She's a really wonderful artist who's constantly streaming, like from her bedroom, like playing every night these live streams. And like, okay, if I were to tune into it all the time, it might get to be too much, although I know she has a fan base that does. But when I'm feeling down at all, I'll just go listen to Jackie, because she's jamming somewhere, and there's just a really good feeling. She's given so much to her fan base this year. It's incredible, because she misses being on tour so much. You can see that she wants to still be playing all the time. And so she hung up the tie-dyed, sheet on the back of the wall, and she films in her bedroom, and she's got just this great vibe and feeling. So whether you're signing with a label or whether you're just playing in your bedroom, I've seen musicians shine a real bright light in the darkness, as they always do.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that. And another artist that you had on your album was actually an artist that I have a great deal of respect for. I mean, a number of them are, but definitely you also had Susie Vinnick on, who's out of Canada. So what was that like working with her and everything? Because I've actually had the pleasure of playing some of her music on the community radio station that I'm part of the team of and all of that. So I definitely know who Susie is. So when I saw that name, I was like, I recognize that name.
That is so cool, because I was really wondering who you were about to say. I thought you were going to say like Alistair Green or something, because he's American, but that's fantastic that you know Susie's music. I met Susie many years ago at a Hornby Island blues workshop. It's a little island off of British Columbia, Vancouver Island. It's called the Gulf Islands. And she was a teacher then. I was a student. I mean, I've known her since I was very young. And she was doing, singing workshops and some songwriting workshops there. And she was playing with a guy named Rick Fines, who's a guy from Ontario, and they do some really beautiful music together. But then also I was invited to later in my career, when I was, playing the same venues as Susie and the same festivals. And, I'd come quite far since when we'd first met. She was in the band that was asked to play behind the women that were invited to the Women's Blues Review Show, which is something that the Toronto Blues Society puts on at Massey Hall, which is one of the most beautiful old venues in Toronto. It's like a big theater. It's where like Neil Young plays. When we played there was like, he had played there a few nights before, and there was still like a piece of paper taped on one of the backstage doors saying like there was a dog inside. I guess that was Neil's dog on tour with him or something. But that's a really wonderful show to be invited to be a part of. You only sing 3 songs, but Susie was playing guitar, I think, one of the times, and bass a couple of the other times. She's multi-instrumentalist. So and then so we kept, we'd bump into each other here and there, or she'd be, playing something I'd be doing. And so I knew that at some point I really wanted to co-write with her. And on this record in particular, I really wanted to reach out and try to write with more women, because I've written often mostly with men. And I don't know why that's been how it's turned out that way, but I can say that it was definitely difficult to convince women maybe to send demos. I don't know if it's something between like people wanting to kind of show off what they can do or not, but women were a bit more guarded about sending their demos and stuff. So the 3 women that I did end up writing with, I'm really happy with what we did. And I'm just so happy that I could involve more female artists on this project, because generally, it's just been male co-writers that I've had through most of my career, and male musicians. So this was like something special, and I'm really glad Susie was one of them. Brandy Disterheft also performed on that same Women's Blues Review Show with me. She was playing stand-up bass. She lives in New York now, but she's a Juno Award winner, and she's known in the jazz world. And Jackie Benson, like I said, who's just amazing. So I met her at a festival in Romania. And she was also working with a guy that I knew who did booking and who's also been a tour manager for me in the past. So we had mutual contacts, and I'd asked Jackie before if she wanted to co-write together, and we just didn't get a chance to do it. But then when I approached her, I was really happy that she could send me this gospel piano kind of lick, because she played piano originally, and then she's now, her main focus is her guitar playing, but that led to the title track. But the song that Susie Vinnick and I wrote together is really special, because it was for my mom. My mom's still alive, but it is for my mom, and she was deeply touched by the song. And it was definitely a more folk vibe than I normally put on the records, although there's a couple songs with a bit more folk singer-songwriter vibe on the Gemini album. But then Susie played guitar and mandolin, and it's really a beautiful song. And she knew a fiddle player. When I asked her if she knew somebody, she connected me with the guy we hired for the fiddle part. So I'm really happy with the work I did with the women on this album. So
it sounds great. Now, one of the things I had the pleasure of talking to several women that sing Southern Soul, among them Karen Wolf and Nellie Tiger Travis, and we got into a long conversation about a number of things, including about the music industry and the feelings that they have as women artists of what kind of respect or lack of respect, as the case may be, that they get and everything of that nature. So I was wondering if you could talk about that as well from your standpoint as to whether you feel that women are getting enough respect in the music industry, particularly in the blues industry, or whether you would like to see there be more women in like even management level or on engineering level and on a number of the other levels that are out there. Because I know we got into a real deep conversation with Dee Simon, Nellie Tiger Travis, and like I said, Karen Wolf and a number of other women that have put out a Southern Soul Christmas type album. And that was maybe about a month ago.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've been lucky in that I've had a female agent. I've had a female tour manager. They were both real powerhouse women, and they were a pleasure to work with. And I've done, an all-female, this blues caravan tour, and I had Laura Chavez on guitar, who's worked with Candy Kane, and she was fantastic when we were touring in the United States with the Roof Tour. So I've had some great experiences where I've seen that women in the business are incredibly strong and are getting the respect they deserve on many levels. But of course, over the years, we all, I think, have dealt with at some point some not so great experiences too. And I try not to focus on the negative because I feel that really blessed with the people I've met over the years and the connections I've made. So for myself, of course, I've been many times the only female on the poster, like the only female name at a festival. To me, that's crazy because I know there's lots of wonderful female artists, and for the blues scene to sometimes overlook or to think that they just need to bring in that one token female vocalist. I even had like a response once when I contacted a blues society jam thing that I'd heard about from someone when I first moved to the Netherlands, and they replied to I didn't do the contact, my agent did just to feel it out, and they replied back that they didn't want any female singers or saxophone players. Like, unbelievable that in today's day and age that you would get an email back like that, from it when an agent's trying to touch base with them to see, if I should come out and maybe sing a few songs and try to connect with some new people in the blues scene here in Holland. So that was really shocking. But I mean, again, it's that kind of mentality that I find similar to like the traditionalist versus like modern outlook of blues and stuff. I mean, some people, they are promoters, and I guess they feel 98% of their artists should be these all male bands. I don't know, because there's definitely, lots of women out there that want to sing, want to play. So, I mean, again, I think that is in any business, in any genre, that there's probably moments when women are feeling that. But then I know that there's men that feel also that women get unfair treatment at times too, they think, because it's a woman. So it's like, I mean, Jesus, that's a big conversation. Myself personally, of course, there's been some moments over the years where I dealt with some maybe harassment or some inappropriate behavior from people. But I think that I come across as so strong that generally nobody tries to fuck with me. That doesn't mean that maybe there haven't been male artists that did the exact same show as me that weren't paid more. So I think that, those are the things that we don't know. We don't know the arrangements that other artists make. We see that we're the headliner, but we don't know if the all male band that played before us made more. You don't know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And changing the topic and everything. What is it like in Holland? I know that I had a friend that used to live in the whole Netherlands area and everything of that nature. So folks that are listening and might think that they want to, whenever the travel is allowed again, visit Holland. What is it about Holland that appeals to you and is the reason that you have made residence there? And what would you tell folks that want to visit Holland that they need to see and not just the regular places that everybody goes to. Like, if you come to DC, everybody's going to go to the museums. They're going to go by the White House. They're going to go by things like that. If you go down to Cape Hatteras, everybody's going to go down to the lighthouse. So every city has its what I call the places that are the things that anybody's going to go to. But I've always been a believer in going off the beaten path and seeing things that you might not normally see. So if somebody was to come visit Holland, what was some place that you would take them to that wouldn't be the tourist places?
That's tough. I mean, personally, I don't love Holland. I love Canada. Canada is my country. The reason I've been living out in Europe was for my career. And so that's a difficult to answer. I mean, obviously now I'm in Holland because of my husband.
Right.
So prior to that, I was in Germany. And of course, I would bitch about Germany and how I missed Canada then. And then I came here and I said, oh, wait a second, I missed Germany because it was bigger and had more nature. Now I'm stuck in this little tiny country called Holland. And, so I'm one of those people that's kind of, always kind of missing home and talking about home. And on the other hand, when I go home, I realize after a month or two that there's just no opportunity for me there with my music. And that's been a big part of the reason I've lived out here. I think even this year was one of the first years where I really started thinking seriously about going back home, because I do miss seeing my niece and nephew, my nieces and nephew. And now one of my other sisters is having a child this month, growing up. Like, there's so many things that I sacrificed for my career. So if I'm going to talk about somewhere, I have to talk about Canada and just say, hey, you all need to go to Canada. You all need to go to Vancouver Island and see this beautiful place before, they fucking log it all or whatever they're going to do, because there's still like clear cutting going on. It's like, are we in the year 2020? Have we learned from mistakes in the past, or is it just greed literally, ruling and operating everything? But I mean, they kind of try to clear cut on the other side of the mountain faces, so you can't see it unless you're going hiking. Or I've got friends that collect chanterelle mushrooms and sell them to the local restaurants and stuff at certain seasons. And they will tell me that they go in certain areas where it's just been clear cut, but it's hidden from the public eye when people are driving their vehicles around and stuff. They don't see it. So I would suggest get over to Vancouver Island, go to BC. It's a beautiful place. I was so blessed to be born there. And one of my favorite places is up on the West Coast, like Tofino, Ucluelet area, where all the people come to go surfing every year. But as far as Holland, it's a small country. I think that the nature here is also beautiful. So that's I think because I'm an island girl and from BC, I'm more into the nature side of things, not into the big cities. Of course, Amsterdam is cool if you want to go. What happens in Amsterdam stays in Amsterdam, then go and have some fun there. It's definitely worth it to see that city. But there's like the Beach Bosch. You can rent a little boat and drive, around with the boat. And there's some really beautiful kind of marsh areas and dunes, and then there's Zeeland, like all the areas with the beach in Holland. But it's really nothing compared to like British Columbia, Vancouver Island, Canada. So I can't really, I'd rather talk about Canada and tell people they need to go there if they've never been there in their lifetimes.
Yeah, well, definitely haven't been to Canada. I remember working with a lady that was from Canada, and she was saying the same thing, that I need to go visit Canada. And I can't remember where she was from. It might have been one of the more eastern type cities like Montreal, or one of the ones that are heading more toward the East Coast side and everything. But definitely I know that they talked about that and everything. And one of the things I was curious about is you talked about having that beach raising in terms of like where you grew up in Canada and everything. I can't think of, and if I'm wrong, you can correct me, but is there any other blues artists that have that kind of surfing beach kind of connection? And have you ever thought about using that as part of your the way you frame yourself and the way that you're like marketed and everything of that nature? Because I know that there's some California-based blues musicians and some that are based in, of course, a number of other places that have that kind of beach vibe, but I've never seen anybody that is actually, and particularly not among the ladies, that has promoted the fact that they have that love of the beach. And I know that you're known as the fire girl, but I could definitely also see you kind of like using the beach aspect as a way to market yourself. And did you ever consider that?
Well, since I'm really fair skinned and have red hair, I would burn on the beach if I spent too much time on the beach. So yeah, no, I never thought of it from a marketing standpoint, but there is a song, which is quite a serious, actually heavy song, kind of speaking about if I die and what you want to say if you're gone to people. But it's called The Lily. It's on an album called The Lily, and this album also had really fantastic reviews. But it actually speaks in the song about to spread my ashes on the West Coast. So it's talking exactly about that sort of area of Canada. So it's come into my lyrics at times. And definitely people always see that if I'm taking a holiday somewhere, I'm at the beach when I post a photo. You know, it's one of my favorite places to be. I miss it a lot because we're a few hours away in the area of Holland that we're in now. We're going to go for a couple of days after Christmas just so that my husband can have a break. And one of our dogs has been to the beach. The other one's never seen the beach before. She's a little one. So the beach holds special memories for me and that particular area of Canada because my dad used to take us camping there every year until a certain point when it became difficult to get reservations. And it's really so popular there now, it can be a little overcrowded. But that area of Canada is just so incredibly beautiful with the ancient rainforests and the ocean. There's just a magic there, I guess I would say. And so that's, I guess, where it first came from. Was my dad also used to walk me along the beach, even in the Parksville Qualicum area, which is sort of like a retirement community. And I would pick up seashells while he was playing harmonica. You know, he would just be playing a very simple sort of like Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And he also played blues harmonica. But when I play harp too, it's always kind of a really simple style with just a bit of bending notes, because that's sort of what I heard my dad do a lot when I was growing up too. So I think that I still hold some special memories of that time with him. And so that's my connection to the beach. Besides just growing up, you know, in that area, I have that strong need to visit the beach just to sit there and you know, watch the sunset, or you know, pick up a rock and throw it in the water, and pick up a piece of driftwood, and you know, and it's a place where I feel peace, where I feel calm, where I feel like I know I'm okay and everything's all right there. So
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You've also had the pleasure of performing with some other great legends, and I know we talked about some earlier, but I saw that you'd also performed with Coco Monteillet, as well as an artist that I have a great deal of respect for, which is Walter Wolfman Washington. So if you could share a little bit with our listeners about what it was like working with them about 2 or 3 years ago and everything, because I definitely know that those are some amazing musicians along with John Mayall.
Well, that was quite a trip because, you know, it was the first time I was invited to sing in India. I couldn't really believe it, actually. And it was in Mumbai. I've been lucky because some of the places that I've always wanted to go, I ended up being able to visit because of my music. Unfortunately, I didn't really get a lot of time to visit the area, obviously, if I'm touring or if I'm doing a show. But I got a little bit of time to check out Mumbai. My main focus was to do the best show I could. So I stayed in the hotel quite a bit until the shows were done. And then like on the last couple of days, I went out finally and started to see more. Because I felt that pressure to make sure that I did a great show for the people of India. And I was the only woman on the headlining aspect of that festival. So I was proud to be there. And I knew Coco Montoya from before. We'd played a festival in the UK, and he'd come up to me after the show and said that he'd really liked one of the songs. And in fact, that was that song, The Lily, that I was talking about earlier. And so that was great. I'd heard really good things about him, that he was a really nice guy, and he was. So, and also he played wonderfully. His show was also fantastic. So we'd met before, but I'd never met John Mayall, and I'd never met Walter Wolfman Washington before. That was great. Walter's wife is amazing. I don't know if I think she was kind of part managing him too or whatever. So she was there with him, and they were a lot of fun to talk to. She was, she's quite a fiery woman too. So we got along. And everybody was having some fun and having some drinks. And John, I mean, he's been around forever. I'd met him once before, also on tour in the United States, where he was playing one of the same festivals as us when I was with the Roof label. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was just quite an experience to be, in Mumbai at this 5-star hotel, and then to do sound check in this huge room, and then to do the show was amazing with all those people there. And just to have all these people from a new culture come up to me afterwards and talk with me. And it was really special, because that's a big part of the reason I do what I do, is also to connect with people from around the world and to try their food and to see where they're from and to learn something. and to go, as far away from my hometown as possible too, just to learn new things about the world and how it works, so it was inspiring because I ended up writing a song called Mumbai that ended up on the Gemini record because of that trip. So I feel like that's a really beautiful song that touched a little bit on what I experienced outside of being on stage while I was in Mumbai.
Wow. Now, what are some places that you would like to go? You've definitely traveled the world. You've been all kinds of a number of places, but what are some places that you have not traveled that is kind of like on Layla's dream list of places that she would like to go perform? And is there anybody that you have that is still around that you would like to perform with that you haven't performed with? Like I said, you performed with a number of great legends and all of that. And of course, I definitely consider you to be a great musician yourself as well. But is there somebody either up and coming or somebody that is established that you would like to perform with that you haven't performed with? And is there a part of the world that you haven't got to that you would like to get to?
Well, those are good questions. I mean, for me, the answer is easy. On the first one, it's Australia. I've wanted to go to Australia since I was a little kid. I had an exchange teacher in elementary school who was from Australia, and she was just so kind. And, I just got this great, connection with her. She used to give us little pieces of dried fruit at the end of the day if we were good. Literally it was like grade 3 or something, and it was like little pieces of dried mango or papaya or whatever. And I just loved her. And I even wrote her a letter after she went back to Australia, and she sent me one letter, and it had like this iron-on koala that you could iron onto your t-shirt. I still have it somewhere. I never ironed it onto a t-shirt, And then I made my mom take me to, Expo in Canada and wait in line to see the Australian pavilion, and, bought myself a little eucalyptus oil from the gift shop and a little book about koalas. And, so literally I just have this connection and memory of just always wanting to go to Australia. And actually we had finally booked a trip to Australia for 2020, and it was not for a gig. It was for a personal trip. And of course it was canceled, but I feel like I will eventually make it to Australia when the time is right. It's the same thing I was saying about the United States when people kept asking me, why haven't you toured there yet? And so I said, when the time is right, and then eventually it happened. And, I am excited to someday visit Australia and meet the people of Australia. And I think my love is there because I had some people reach out to me after the single from the new record was released, which is called Nowhere Left to Go. The single is co-written with Jackie Benson. She sent me the music. I wrote the lyrics, and it's about the wildfires in Australia that happened 2019, 2020, which were then sort of really overshadowed by the pandemic. But I feel like they were just starting to come out of that dark summer they experienced, when we kind of started to worry about the virus. So I dedicated the music video, which is clear at the end of the music video too, which was released like a few weeks ago or whatever, to the people of Australia who survived it, and also for those affected, and not just the people, but the animals, because obviously there was a massive amount of wildlife that were devastated by those fires. So it affected me because I've always wanted to go there, and then I could see that it was burning, and it was really, my heart was going out to the people there. So someday. And as far as artists that I'd like to perform with, well, there's so many, but I was really sad when BB King passed away. I always wanted to meet BB at least. That was really heartbreaking for me. I kind of always envisioned that someday we would cross paths and I would get a chance to, just talk with him, or, maybe sing a song or something. I would have loved that. So now, I still want to get on stage with Tedeschi Trucks Band, because I feel like that would be an incredible moment. I think Susan and I could do something really cool together on stage. But Derek, I've wanted to play with for a long time because I really love his sound. I don't know. I'm trying to think anyone else specifically in the blues scene. I guess that's it. I don't really, for me, I at some point it's like, it's not in the destination, it's in the journey. And so at some point I got that, because I remember there was a few times when I was younger and I'd have a great new experience, and I would be so high and ungrounded during the experience that I wouldn't get to really appreciate the experience itself, And now I have just a more grounded ability when I'm on stage, say playing in Mumbai for the first time or something like this, to ground myself and enjoy the moment. It doesn't mean there aren't still nerves there, that it's not sort of a, different than playing a venue that I played like 6 times before or something, but I feel that I can enjoy the moments better now than I used to, and that there is no real big destination that I'm trying to reach, especially once you've made 14, 15 albums like I have. Every record feels a bit different. I remember I used to get so excited when the box of records would show up, and I still get that feeling, but it's different now. And the main thing is I always want to keep learning. I want to keep growing and learning as an artist. And doing this last project where I had to work with so many different people, co-writing and from a distance, I really learned a lot. And that's the most important thing, is that, you feel like, oh, I've done it all. How can I do something better than that last record? Or how can I do a better live? I've already done 3 live albums, but you're growing and you're developing. Hopefully you're not releasing albums that sound the same again and again. And that's for sure been the situation in my career. So I feel good about where I'm at, and we'll see what the future holds. No matter what happens in the world, I'll continue to make music. How I'll be able to bring that music to people, I'll have to wait and see what I can do, because I also have to know my own limitations. And I know that I don't want to sing to a bunch of people wearing masks. I need to be able to connect with people. I need to see their faces and see the joy that the music brings to them. And so for myself right now, I know that I've got certain boundaries that I've got to say, you know what, I can't do that. That's not going to make me feel good, But let's see what the future brings, because as I said before, musicians are so adaptable and so inventive and creative in difficult times.
You definitely, musicians have always come out of some great difficult times, even historically, and things of that nature. But you're right that sometimes you do get kind of caught up in what's going on and don't pay attention to enough of being in the moment, as you just described it, and things of that nature. Because I've actually had the pleasure of working for, unfortunately, the venue that is has done it in the past is shuttered at the moment. They're doing some virtual events here and there, but I don't know. They did not do the Blues Festival this year, but the Bull Durham Blues Festival is a major blues festival in Durham that has a rich history and things of that nature. It had moved into more of an inside venue over the last several years and everything, but it used to be held out in an outside ballpark. It was actually the ballpark that was made famous by the movie Bull Durham and all of that. But I remember going to that festival and seeing some great artists and all of that. But then friends of mine would come to the festival because I would be doing MC work as well as working for that particular venue. So doing a lot of the running back and forth and doing the planning and all of that kind of stuff. So friends of mine would tell me about something that one of you performers did, or that some song that happened. And I'm sitting there going like, okay, if you say that happened, I'll take your word for it, because I was in the middle of being in the midst of whatever was going on. And therefore I didn't necessarily catch it as much as I would have liked to have catched it as a fan, because in that particular situation, I was part of the planning team. So sometimes you might catch some of the things, but you also miss quite a bit, because, you might be running over there, taking the artist to get paid, or taking the
So true. I mean, I always used to give a CD to the volunteers that would drive me. And, I've always been one of those people. In fact, I've got a funny story. When I was playing a show in Germany, and I went to, it was like one of the last gigs of a tour that I had with a label, and the label was run by, a good friend of mine who was also a musician. Anyways, I wanted to buy him an instrument as a thank you, because he'd done so much for me. And so I ended up getting him a mandolin, actually. And I went to a music shop in Germany, after sound check, and tried to find something. And I did find something I liked. And, on the way back, I gave the taxi driver a CD. And later someone came to the show and talked to me after the show and said, oh yeah, we got in a taxi and they were playing your music. And I said, well, that's the guy I gave the CD to earlier. But it was just so funny. But like, again, with the volunteers, I have to say that a lot of the blues festivals wouldn't happen without the volunteers. And sometimes there's so many volunteers involved. And, I always tried to make special thank yous for them if I could, because the ones that help you make it comfortable for yourself under those circumstances. Sometimes when you're coming from another place or another gig and you're tired, and pick you up and, get you some food if you need it, and sell your CDs for you or whatever.
Right.
And a lot of them, like you said, unless they're selling the CDs right next to the stage, they miss the shows. They don't get to see a lot of the music, but they make those festivals happen, and often for simply their love of music, not for any pay. So can't say enough about, the volunteers when it comes to blues festivals.
Yeah, those volunteers are very much important and everything. And speaking of artists, I don't know whether you've ever had the pleasure of performing with, but I've actually had the pleasure of think once or twice introducing them as one of the MCs and everything. And then I've definitely had the pleasure of attending concerts where I was just a fan watching it. So I think I've seen Buddy 4 or 5 times. So I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of working or performing with Buddy Guy, but if you have not, then that would definitely be somebody that you probably need to put on your list of folks to perform with.
Yes, I never performed with Buddy, but I met Buddy at his club in Chicago. He was there at Legends when I walked in the first time I came. I've been there a few times. And yeah, he was sitting with a friend at the bar watching the baseball game on the TV. And I heard that he's there a lot. So yeah, I asked to get a photo with him. I was very young at the time. It was a big moment, and then I watched the show later and it was amazing. He didn't play guitar at all. He was only singing that night. And he kept, the waitress would keep coming up and bringing him drinks, and he would pour a shot, drink the shot on stage, and she would walk off stage and he'd kind of be looking at her, her bum wiggle as she'd walk off stage, and then later he'd be singing again, and then he'd make a gesture and she'd come back up again. I don't know how much he drank, but I don't know how he was still standing. But it was an incredible show, because the other times I've seen him, he was playing guitar and doing his show at a festival, so this was this really intimate thing that I experienced at his club in Chicago. Was great. I'm really glad that I got a chance to meet him. He was friendly. And actually a friend of mine had said that someone in Stratford, Ontario had been asked years before, had worked with him on the design of a guitar, a star-shaped guitar. And so he'd actually sent this blueprint thing for this guitar with me to Chicago to give to Buddy. And I kind of was like, oh, I don't know. Cause this friend of mine was a little bit out there, but I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to talk to Buddy about it and see if he remembers. And he actually did. He remembered this guitar, and we talked about that for a few minutes too, but very nice guy. I think he very approachable, and I would love to work with him someday. It would be great.
Yeah, he's very approachable and still has amazing energy. I think the last time I saw him at a concert was at a fairly decent sized venue. It might have been a 2,000 seater or something like that. And he was still running around the entire audience, with the kind of part of the guitar where you can go out into the audience and everything. And I'm going this man is close. I'm in my late 50s. So this man is close to my dad's age in terms of being in the 80s and everything. But you would think
he looks ageless. It's really hard to tell how old he is because he just looks so good, So yeah, it's true. Yeah.
You're sitting there going I cannot believe how much energy he has and all of that. So it's just shocking when you see somebody like that and everything that has that kind of energy and everything. What advice would you give to somebody, like you said, you've been in the game for a number of years and everything, but for somebody that was trying to break into the music business and wanted to get into it, that might be listening and everything, what kind of advice would you give them if they wanted to get into either blues or just music in general, or entertainment in general?
I guess the same thing that when I was doing blues in the schools a few times. I did it in Germany, I did it in Canada. And when I would talk to the kids, the main point that I would try to make, because of course there is no real book that you follow when it comes to the entertainment business, or the music industry, is to just keep going, because, there's always going to be another door that's going to open. A lot of them are going to, shut in your face, and there's going to be people that don't understand what you're doing. But if you stay true to your heart and continue making music, there'll be new opportunities for you. And definitely some of those same people that were not interested in what you were doing might be interested in what you're doing 7 years later and stuff. And I've experienced that myself. So I feel you have to believe that what you're bringing to the table is worthwhile. You have to work hard. I think that it's good if there's even a little bit of competitiveness. It should be, in a kind way. But if someone does something that really fucking blows your mind that you see on stage, then you want to go home and work even harder, So I think that, just don't give up. I mean, it's like any business. And also with any business too, and they always think it's I have to remind myself of this often too with other things in my life, but like, if something really scares you, that's probably what you should be doing, And I know that sounds, that could be taken a lot of different ways, but in all reality, at some point you've done it, so you need to do something new. And sometimes that new thing might be fucking terrifying to you, but that is, how we grow, is not doing the same old trick again and again, but trying something new. So I feel like facing fears and conquering fears in any business eventually will kind of also take you further. But like really with the music business, because I have a close friend whose daughter was interested in doing it, and she was doing school band and everything. And when it comes to making a living, I think it's so difficult right now. I don't know that I would suggest for anyone to specifically only depend on that for their financial freedom. You can teach lessons. You can, there's so many things you can do besides just tour to make a living now. So there's other ways to be involved with music too. But, you've got to continue going even in those moments when you feel like giving up. And I think all musicians have had moments like that where they just feel exhausted or something, a tour goes badly, or, people don't understand something that they tried to do, or they have, something go on with a musician that they really cared about, that they worked with for a long time, and it ends. And, because like there's lots of different moments of heartache in the business, because we are musicians and we do get so close to the people that we work with and we love them so much, But I think that the main thing is to continue going forward, and facing fears and challenging yourself and just keep going, whatever happens. Because if you stopped when you thought things, were over, then you wouldn't have had some of those opportunities you might have had 3 years later. So, and I know that for sure from personal experience. So.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. But I also wonder, and I wonder your thoughts on this. Sometimes I talk to folks in various aspects of what is labeled show business. They will admit that they are very good at the show part, but they're not necessarily all that great at the business aspect. So do you think that it's important for more of our people that are trying to get into business or show business to learn the business aspect? Because even whether they don't necessarily do the managerial jobs or do the accounting jobs or do a number of those other things, I sometimes feel that a lot of folks on all levels, I mean, everything from the professional, like the grand star level, down to the hobbyist type artists, are so caught up in the show part that they don't necessarily know the business part. And I know that they call it show business for a reason, because we definitely got both of those aspects. But I just wondering your thoughts on that, whether you think that some of our artists, whether they're up and coming or developed, need to learn more of that business aspect.
Well, definitely. I think that you've got to be, again, realistic about the time that you're living in. It isn't like it used to be, where, someone would discover you and that would be it. I mean, even my sister, she was dating a guy years ago. They're not together anymore, but he played, and he came from a wealthy family, and he would make records, but he wasn't touring at all. He wasn't playing. And I said to her, he needs to get out and do more gigs. That's how new opportunities are going to come for him and how he's going to get her. And she said, oh, well, we're just looking for the right producer for the next record that's going to open all those doors for him. And the thing is, when people sort of think, that it only takes one person, and maybe sometimes that's still true, but I personally think, from, especially in the genre that I'm in, that it is not just like one person's going to come along and sign you and that's going to be it, And I feel like maybe some younger, people, when they look at the music business, they still think that's true because they watch Netflix documentaries about Ariana Grande or something. And even some of those artists have really worked hard prior to being discovered, Right. So like Justin Bieber, I mean, even he was playing, drums when he was like 6 years old and stuff. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine knows him from Ontario, and they used to jam with him when they were kids. So it's like, the reality is that there's a long road for most people. It's generally not like my parents know somebody and they sign me for the Mickey Mouse Club and then all of a sudden I'm a star. Even artists like Britney Spears and pop artists like this have worked really hard to get where they are today. So I think that you've got to be realistic. On the other hand, yes, some people are trying to manage themselves and it's not working. Why not just give it a try with someone? If that, person you feel you can trust is going to try to follow through on some of the promises they're making. I mean, that's each person's journey is individual and special with the music business. I really see that, because if you watch, I think it was Lightning in a Bottle, that documentary, you see that there was guys around the time that BB King became successful who ended up still in the shadows.
Right.
And or was it in the shadow, something in the shadows, the name of the film? I'm just trying to think. It was a documentary that is really heartbreaking on some levels, but a good realization that not everybody's going to make it. Not everybody can make it.
Right.
And so that means that there has to be some enjoyment again in the journey, not in the destination, because there was guys that were cleaning up the halls that BB played, and they were playing blues, and they were also great at the time that he was discovered. They could have been discovered, but they weren't, or they might, for whatever reasons, they didn't make it, into the mainstream, or they didn't have the opportunities to make a living doing it, or for whatever reasons. Each of us is going to have a different journey when it comes to all that. So I think that the business, that depends on the person, because I know lots of people managing themselves that do a fantastic job. And then I know people where it wasn't going anywhere and they got the right manager and it took off. So it's kind of got to be a journey that you're going to find that out as you go along. I wouldn't say that there's a right or wrong with that, because some of the people managing themselves are getting, good fees. They're getting good opportunities. They're doing a good job, as artists and as business people. And then others have a more difficult time with it. So, but you can definitely still get taken advantage of in the business, in that people can make promises and have you sign a contract and be giving your percentage of your income to someone that then actually does nothing for you. You can sign to a label that basically just doesn't promote your stuff at all, but just you owe a bunch of money to after making a record. And so you just have to kind of find your way through that. I wouldn't say that there's one way that's right or wrong.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And as you were saying it, I was thinking about a couple of things. One, you're right, a number of these award shows and things of that nature where people are picked and then they go on tour, whether that's American Idol, whether that's The Voice, whether that's a number of these other kind of shows. When you read about the folks that were on those contests, they've been in their church forever. They've been in a lot of those roads forever. And then they got that break with whatever that contest was. Because I think that Fantasia, who's out of the Greensboro High Point area, that she has definitely been performing many times before she won. Clay Aiken had definitely been performing for a number of years before he did well in the contest and everything of that nature.
And thank God, because honestly, like for myself too, some of the opportunities, if I'd had them when I was younger, I wouldn't have known what to do with it. I wouldn't have been mature enough as an artist, for it to really to do much for me, and I would have felt ungrounded and wouldn't have been able to even enjoy the moment. So I think that, sometimes it's better when things come to you at the right times instead of too soon, when you're too young, or maybe when you're not ready, And again, if you had a really bad experience with a manager, that would turn you off that forever, which would be a sad thing, because there might be somebody down the road that's better. So it's sort of like you've definitely got to take chances, and you've got to fail sometimes, or you've got to have bad experiences to teach you what you need to do next. But it's a journey. So that means you can go from independent to then labels, then back to independent, just like I have. And you can just keep going in whatever way feels right for you to make your music and to communicate what you want to communicate to people,
No, that makes a lot of sense. And the other thing that I was thinking about was more of a sports analogy, but I was thinking about the amount of people that have played pickup basketball games. And when you hear their stories, they were greater than Michael Jordan or greater than LeBron James, but, they got caught up in the pickup basketball scenario and did some amazing things on there, but they never made it to the NBA, or if they were women players, to the WNBA. So a lot of times you're right. There are these people that are much better, kind of like the ones that you were talking about that played with BB King, but they might have been much better than those artists. Just like there are a number of folks that were much better in the streets of New York, the streets of LA, and the streets of DC than any of our superstar NBA players, but they didn't get that break necessarily. So,
and I mean, also, it's what you're visualizing. I know for myself, I kind of visualize playing to large audiences and, experiencing certain things, but I want to be able to walk down the street, and not be harassed. I want to have some privacy still. And I feel like, is it really what we want to be famous? I mean, we want to be able to make a living. And so we need to be known to a certain degree to be able to make a living and to be, desired by promoters and by fans to come and support us. But on the other hand, like, we want to still have privacy and protection and our lives, and I feel like that would be gone if our name becomes household. And so for myself, I'm okay with where I'm at. I mean, of course, like, you always want to be able to make a little bit better fee or be a little bit more secure, maybe even have some kind of retirement plan, which is pretty difficult in this business. But, I wouldn't want to have to, move away to have privacy. Like, what did Shania Twain move to Switzerland where she didn't get fucking mobbed every time she walked out of the house, So it's like definitely important to still have that other side to life,
No, yeah, definitely gonna have that other side to life and everything. As we get ready to wind down and everything, I had a couple of just quick questions for you, which is one, if you could tell our audience a little bit about the title Fire Girl and what that means. I imagine it has to do with the red hair, and I think you alluded to that earlier, but just in case I'm wrong, if you could tell folks where that title came from. We definitely talked about Nowhere Left to Go and how that was about Australia and everything that they were going through. But if you could tell a little bit about Fire Girl and what that was about.
Oh, about my nickname, The Fire Girl?
Yes.
Yeah. There's also an album called The Fire Girl that I released in 2009, which was actually made at my mom's house and is self-produced. And that's actually, that one isn't really strictly bluesy. It's got some really great songwriting. It's more of a singer-songwriter album, actually. And so that's another one that people really like. But the name Fire Girl actually came from my best friend. Unfortunately, she passed away years ago now of a brain aneurysm. Her name was Marcia Maido. She worked with women on the streets, and she had an illustrious, career of her own when it came to supporting, women that had been through really, really terrible things in Ontario and in Calgary. And I sang at some of her events where she was fundraising for those causes. And I always really enjoyed that. But we had met years ago on Vancouver Island, and we were very close friends. She's tattooed on my back, so she's always looking over my shoulder, and she's watching out for me. But she gave me that nickname. Sort of funny. As far as I remember it, we were at a small, like, kind of general store on Vancouver Island, and some little girl said something like, "The Fire Girl, she's the Fire Girl," to her, or something about me. And she told me about it when I came out of the store, and I said, "What?" And she said, "Oh, that little girl just came up and said, like, you're the Fire Girl," or something. And she just thought that was so crazy. And so she started calling me the Fire. So I don't know if it was that little girl or if it was her, but yeah, my best friend gave me that nickname. And then, of course, it's carried through and obviously also complements my stage personality in a lot of ways, because there's a certain energy that comes out of me on stage that doesn't come from anywhere else. So when you were talking about Buddy Guy's energy on stage, there were moments when I just felt so dead on tour, when I was just so tired and I just didn't feel like I could do it. And then, the band starts when you walk out on stage, and that's it. Like, it's something to do with God takes over. And there's a certain adrenaline rush, of course, from the whole energy of the experience. But there's really something at moments that it feels like takes over that has nothing to do with you. Like, you're really just a vessel carrying, some kind of feeling, emotion, message to the people in front of you. And also that it's a healing, therapeutic thing for yourself. So it brings you a energy that you never thought you could find,
No, I definitely agree with you on that. And one of the things I was just thinking about as you were saying that is that even when I've done emceeing jobs and everything, I've done them for a number of local festivals here and everything. There are days that I've been, not feeling the best in the world. I might have not woken up, feeling upset stomach or feeling something that was not the best energy or whatever. But as soon as I got into that space of introducing the musicians and getting involved in whatever the festival was and everything like that, all of that negativity was gone. And like I said, it might come back afterwards, but a lot of times it would be almost washed away by that energy that you're talking about. So a lot of times it would just make the rest of the day go on in a very positive way, even if you had like not the greatest day in the world. You might have had a run-in with a significant other or a run-in with a boss or something like that that was giving you that negative energy. But then once you got on stage, even on a lesser level, like I said, MC only has to be on there for like 2 minutes or 3 minutes at the most, at best, reading a lot of announcements and things of that nature, and then bringing on the guests. So we don't have to have that same limelight as the musicians, and wouldn't necessarily want that same limelight, but just in that quick time frame on the stage, it can definitely change your energy in a lot of different ways and all of that. So I would agree with you.
I mean, there's so many people that make a show what it is. And I think that for myself, I was always impressed hugely by my tour managers, because a lot of times in the blues scene, you couldn't maybe afford to have a lot of separate people doing everything. So the tour manager would be doing multiple duties, like driving, checking you into the hotel, talking with the promoter, getting paid after the show, often selling the merchandise for you, setting the water and the towel and checking that everything sounds good out front and doing things on the stage, you know. And so, you know, there's people involved that aren't the ones that you're seeing put on the show that are so vital and important to everything that's happening. And so I feel that we always need to pay deep homage, respect to the sound people, to the lighting crews, to the MCs, to the also the radio DJs, the promoters, the journalists, the people that also help to continue promoting our music and bringing us into their venues. And I really feel sad about how many of the venues will close, unfortunately, due to the situation this year. And the promoters are dealing with a whole different set of problems than the musicians are. And luckily, because I'm friends with some promoters, I've really gotten a good look at that, you know, where they're just trying to adapt to whatever they're being told to try to stay open and adapt to whatever, in whatever way they can, to keep the music going. And sometimes it's in fact even the promoters that are even bigger music fans and even more dedicated to the music than even some of the musicians are, you know. So it's important to pay homage to all those people that make this happen, all of these things happen, because it's not just the artists, you know.
No, I definitely agree with you on that. And you had alluded earlier to the importance, even in the way that you go on stage, to spirituality. How important do you think spirituality is to your performance? Because like I said, you have alluded to it a couple of times, both going to the church and definitely, to me, church and spirituality are separate, because like I said, that's religion versus spirituality, and I'm actually consider myself more of a spiritual person than I am a religious person. Not saying that I won't go to a church or things of that nature, but how important is spirituality to you on stage and to your music?
Well, I am definitely a spiritual person, not a religious person, and I think that I always had some type of connection, either with Mother Nature or with something that I felt strongly was sort of that I was a part of, I guess, because I feel like a piece of something, not that something is, created me or is guiding me, or, you know, I am a part of something, a type of energy. Yeah. And that's changed over the years, although definitely at one point I ended up having a back surgery, and that was, I guess, 2012, I think. And because of that surgery, I wasn't able to walk at one point, and my album that we were supposed to make was canceled, and my career came to a grinding halt. And I've actually had a few moments like that over the years. And sometimes that's really important when that happens, because you have such a whole new appreciation for things when you can get back to it, you know.
Right.
But also the only way that I was able to heal from that was to really stop everything. As long as I was still hanging on and still stressed about the fact that the album, that I wasn't in the studio and the gigs were getting canceled, I felt that my body was in pain. And as soon as I just let go and I just went, you know what, I'm just going to like put some crystals on my back and listen to some meditation music and do whatever I can to heal my body and let go of this like need to perform in this career, was the best thing I could do for myself. And eventually I healed, and eventually I came back to the music business. But I think that experience then led to me becoming sober for a while and also doing those gospel videos. And I've always resonated with the gospel music just because it has that same capacity of emotional connection as the blues does, in my opinion. And well, it's all connected. Yeah. But I think that there's been moments where I've become more deeply connected to something because I've known that without that faith, I wouldn't have made it through whatever that experience was to be able to keep making music. So I guess, for me, the spiritual aspect to it is just that I know that I'm a part of something, that I know that I was put on this earth with this talent. So I could have not used it or used it, but I feel a certain responsibility somehow still to that talent that God or whatever gave me, or that I was born with as a part of something. That, like, that's my reason for being here in many ways, is also to sing. There's other things that I can do to bring light into people's lives, but that's definitely something that I feel a certain responsibility to keep going, even at times when I don't want to do it anymore. So there's not just that push, like, okay, you've got to keep going because there'll be an opportunity, but there's also that push of like, hey, wait a second, people need you. People need to hear you. You can bring some joy and some light into their lives, so there's also been that feeling at times. So that would be where the spiritual aspect, I think, comes in, is that realization that it's bigger than me and that it's not just up to me, that I wouldn't have been given this voice if it wasn't for some type of reason. And so, of course, I could sing just for my family or not have taken it as far as I did, but I've enjoyed it and I'm grateful. And because I appreciate it, I think that's what helps me to have been able to come this far and to keep going. So, and I hope I'll be able to continue going. And no matter what, I love to sing and I get a healing from it, so it's not just about healing others, but it's also healing me. So.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. One of the other things I was going to ask, and as I said, give me to wind everything down, is you've mentioned the tattoos and you've definitely got a couple of them, but what is the most what is your best tattoo in your mind, and what's the tattoo that you want? Because everybody that I know that's got tattoos has got that tattoo that they want that they don't have yet.
Oh, that's tough. I mean, for a little while, I was in the tattoo scene. I started dating a guy who actually many of the songs on that album, The Fire Girl, are inspired by, and he was a tattoo artist that I met when I was in Toronto. And he was in Chicago, or he was in Lockport, Illinois, actually. And that's how I ended up like at Buddy Guy's Club eventually. And then also singing at some of the clubs in Chicago as I went to visit him in Illinois. And when I was quite a bit younger than I am now. And so after meeting him, I got kind of into the tattoo scene and then met some really world famous tattoo artists. One of them, Bob Tyrell, who does these incredible black and gray portraits. And he's the one that did like my Frank Zappa, my Tom Waits, and my Neil Young portraits. And then I had a couple other guys do the Janis Joplin and the Bob Dylan. I have Muddy Waters. Also, Bob had done Muddy Waters. And so I was kind of, when I was in the tattoo scene more, I was, seeing those guys more often. And so then I was continuing to keep getting these portraits of these artists that I loved. And I still wanted to get Joni Mitchell. I wanted to get Peter Green. I wanted to get Roy Buchanan. I still had like some dream portraits I'd like to get. But then, I kind of fell out of that scene. I wasn't hanging out in that scene as much. It involved a lot of partying too and drinking. So after a while, it wasn't my thing. But my most recent tattoo was done here in the Netherlands not that long ago of one of my dogs. And actually, I'm really excited about the other one coming soon. On the other arm will be the other dog. So, so I guess, I like to use my body as a canvas to express not only things that I've experienced, but like, people I have respect or adoration for. And so when it comes to the artists musically that I have decided to get tattoos of, it's because in some way their music has deeply touched or resonated in some part of my life in a way that I can't, that I want to honor, I guess is what I would say. So.
And you mentioned Muddy Waters. What is it about Muddy Waters music that inspired you? Because like I said, I definitely am a fan of Muddy Waters, but I'd love to hear your perception of Muddy and his life and what it is about Muddy Waters that inspired you to want to put a Muddy Waters tattoo on yourself.
I just love, his gentle strength. I mean, there's something so charismatic about him. And of course, there's a certain sexual energy sometimes to his performances, which also people feel when they see me on stage. But he has such a, they're the dogs. They're getting restless. If you watch his performance, like on The Last Waltz with the band and performances like that, or any of his live performances really, then there's I tend to move a lot and sing. There's a lot, it's an animated thing. his animations are much more subtle and yet so poignant and so impactful. And I feel like there was something that he was able to do in a very slight movement and in a very deep tone of his voice that I have to like, run around the stage and scream and headbang to be able to get the same effect, So there's just something that I love about his gentle strength, because that's how I sort of see it. It's not in your face, he doesn't have to be in your face, it's very subtle movements and a really beautiful, strong voice and a certain charisma that I haven't seen out of many people in the blues scene since. So I wish I could have seen him live or met him, but he definitely is one of my favorite blues artists. I mean, Howlin' Wolf is definitely just right close I wouldn't say even second, but I would say is right in line there too with him. But, both have this sort of like gentle giant aspect, but obviously Howlin' Wolf was a big guy, but
Right.
Muddy, there's just something huge about his stage presence, his music, and his voice, but he didn't need to push any of that too hard. It was just there in a very natural way, and there's something I just love about that. I grew up listening to him, I always loved when my dad would put those albums on. So
Oh, yes, definitely sounds like you grew up with some great musicians that you were listening to in terms of being fans of and all of that. And the folks that are listening, if they wanted to get the latest album, these are the last two questions. How would they get in touch with you to get the album? And then the last absolute question is, and it's something that I try to ask for all my guests on all the shows that I do, if you could give like some words of encouragement to the world out there and everything, what would that word of encouragement be? Because I try to have folks get these words of encouragement during these troubling times that we are in. So if you could give a word of positivity or a word of encouragement, what would that be? So that's the last two questions is how can folks get this great album? And like I said, I will intersperse some cuts from the album as I edit this interview so that folks can actually hear the sounds and all of that. But definitely, how would you have them get in touch with you? And also definitely your words of encouragement.
Well, the album will drop as far as an official release January 8th. So then you should be able to find it on all streaming and download sites. As far as physical copies, I know it's easier to order in Europe. I think that even I saw distribution was happening in Japan, but you should be able to get your hands on a copy online. But obviously, if you want an autographed copy, you can just directly contact me. And I'm still very grassroots in that I really like to connect and speak with my fans. So I'll always write you back and talk with you. So if anybody wants to order one from me, that never hurts, because obviously then the money goes straight into my pocket, thankfully. And I've got the other older albums like Gemini and Retrospective Tour, because those are the most recent independent releases. And if you go to layla.ca, layla.ca, you'll find like a shop page that has some information and some links there. But really my email address is there, and you can contact me through other places like Instagram and Facebook and stuff. So, and as far as what the world's going through right now, well, there's so much I could say on that. I guess the most important thing is to not be afraid, because there's certain powers that be right now that would want you to be afraid. And it's really important to still remember, who you are and what you stand for, what you believe, but also for there to be a part of you that stays open to other people's experiences and stories. One tip of advice that my dad gave me when I was a kid was never to believe your own story too much. And I think it's really important, especially when we see the political division going on, and then other reasons, masks or not masks, and people really becoming divided, even family members not speaking to each other because of things that have happened this year, relationships breaking up and all kinds of other things going on, that we can learn from each other. And the only way we're going to learn is to be able to talk about it. And, without fear, to sit down and have conversations, not to try to convince someone that this is the way it should be, but to have open-minded conversations still and leave some room for people to express their concerns, I mean, and personally, sometimes I see, certain belief points stemming from fear. And so then, of course, it's difficult if someone comes and sits down and starts talking with you and they're afraid, then their viewpoint's going to be different than yours, But right now, it's not that things have changed as much as people might feel they have. Maybe on some levels, some of this was even coming. Maybe this is a huge shift for all of us. And maybe this will shift us in a direction where either we're going to see things more clearly or we're going to go deeper into darkness. But eventually, even in the darkest places, there's going to be a light again. And so we might see some really hard times coming. You know, I don't want to envision that too much because I don't want to help in creating that. I want to visualize more that we're going to get through this without too much pain and loss. But in complacency and laziness and, you know, material infatuation, we find ourselves now with people that are controlling a lot of what's happening with a real unbalanced power. And we've been seeing it come for a really long time. So, you know, we're here and we've got to stay strong. We must try not to give in to fear. And we must try to have open conversation and listen to each other. And in that way, we will find where we fit and what our place is and our position in how to go forward, you know, because everyone will have a part in that, you know, so. And I think,
there's a dog.
That's my call. Because you know what? On this subject, I could ramble for a while. So my dog's telling me to stop now. Oh, Marc, I really enjoyed talking with you today. I really appreciate that. And I'm glad that we could connect. And it's fun to do something like a podcast type thing like this, because I don't do it often enough where you can really talk for longer, you know, and you can really talk on all subjects. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd love to have this conversation with you, and hopefully we can do another one in the not too distant future as well.
Definitely, that was a great interview and everything. Definitely enjoyed talking to Layla Zoe and hearing some of her thoughts and everything along that line. So, like I said, I think that y'all were getting a definite treat in hearing a lot of the things that she had to say and a lot of attitudes that she was sharing and everything. Y'all do know it's the online dinner party. And of course, on the online dinner party, we oftentimes will have our mystery guests as well. So I need to give y'all some clues as to who the mystery guests are and who you might be trying to figure out who these mystery guests are and seeing if you can figure out who they are before I reveal them. So definitely we're getting ready to bring up some of the clues. And one of them is an international person, as I oftentimes do. And the other is somebody that is more nationally oriented and along those lines. So definitely about to reveal some of those clues and everything. And definitely hope that you will check these clues out and maybe come up with some of the answers. But this particular person was born in poverty in the rural village of Los Totos in the Pampas as the youngest of 5 children. So that's a clue about them. So it is a young lady. And at 15 in 1934, she moved to the nation's capital of Buenos Aires to pursue a career as a stage, radio, and film actress. So she pursued a career as a stage, radio, and film actress. And she met her husband thanks to an earthquake. That's right. They met due to an earthquake. He was probably involved in some sort of military kind of thing or along that lines. And that is how they met. And despite their age difference, definitely she was in her mid-20s and he was in his late 40s. They got married in 1945. So that's definitely some of the clues as well. And she unofficially took over the Ministries of Health and Labor and devoted a huge amount of time to meeting with poor Argentinians visiting hospitals and orphanages. So that's a clue about her as well. And she formed a political party comprised of female voters. So that's another clue that folks might be interested in knowing about as well. And she established the Marie Eva Doty Social Help Foundation. She worked long hours giving money and medicine to the poor and touching and kissing the sick. And an aerial view of the city named after her reveals that it was built in the shape of her profile, with her head facing right and her hair tied in her signature chigan. So definitely that is the clue of one of the people that we are trying to figure out if you can figure out who that person is or not. She also traveled to Spain, Italy, France, and Switzerland in something dubbed the Rainbow Tour. This was her goodwill trip, which included meeting with Francisco Franco, Pope Pius the 12th, and Charles de Gaulle. So that is one of the clues as well. By the way, folks need to be watching now and try to give me the answers, because you cannot give me the answers in the reruns. That doesn't count. So I need to get the answers now. So hopefully y'all are watching and are able to give me the clues. And by the way, dressed to the nines, she gave money to poor children in Spain, visited the Palace of Versailles, and encountered protesters in Switzerland who threw stones and tomatoes at her. And there is a museum named after her. So there's a museum named after her wherever she is at, and all of that. And it was founded by Cristina Alvarez Rodriguez, who is her grandniece. And the museum is housed in a building that a foundation named for her set up for homeless women and children to live in until they were on their feet. And I understand that meant that they had to have a job as well as their own living place and all of that. So that is one of the things that she was all about. And she also believed that all women should have the right to vote. So she gave radio addresses, wrote articles, and made speeches at rallies supporting women's suffrage. And she was the first Argentinian to undergo chemotherapy, but the cancer that she unfortunately had metastasized. I think that's the way you pronounce that, but don't quote me on that, because I probably just totally butchered that pronunciation. And the cancer prevented her from running for vice president. That's right, cancer prevented her from running for vice president. So these are some of the clues about this particular person and all of that. Of course, Madonna did played in a movie about her. That's right. The world famous singer Madonna played in a movie about her, and her life also inspired the Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber Broadway musical Evita. So definitely that's something a little bit about her. So she's been featured on Broadway and all of that. And she did have some quotes. You know, a lot of these famous folks do know that they have to have their quotes as well. So one of her quotes was that, "I know, like every woman of the people, I have more strength than I appear to have." And then she also said, "One cannot accomplish anything without fanaticism." And she also said that keeping books on social aid is capitalistic nonsense. That's right. She's called it capitalistic nonsense and all of that. And that's what she had the nerve and the ability to say and everything. Some people would say that they might agree with that. Some people might say that they don't agree with that. She just says that, "I just use the money for the poor. I can't stop to count it." So she also said, "It is not philanthropy, nor is it charity. It is not even," what else did she say? "It is not even social welfare. To me, it is strict justice. I do nothing but return to the poor what the rest of us owe them." So she was definitely one that was trying to support the poor, because she also added, because we had taken it away from them unjustly. And like a lot of folks, she realized that time was the greatest enemy. And then she said something about oligarchs as well. She said, "There are some oligarchs that make me want to bite them, just as one crunches into a carrot or a radish." So that is a little bit about that particular person and all of that. So I don't know if y'all have figured out who mystery guest number one is or not, but hopefully you'll be able to figure that out as you think about it as to who that mystery guest may be and all of that. So definitely that is our mystery guest number one, and hopefully folks will be thinking about that and they'll be able to come up with the answer of that particular mystery guest. And by the way, I just saw the news thing that rolled across that said that apparently on Friday, Vice President Pence is going to take the vaccine, and I'm guessing he's going to take it publicly and all of that. So we're going to see if that is the case and everything along that lines. But I just saw a news thing come across in terms of news releases that was going to be the case on Friday. So in like 2 days, apparently Vice President Pence is going to take the vaccine, and I guess he's going to take it publicly, maybe on the air or something along those lines. But we're going to find out whether he actually does it or whether that's just something that he's saying to make people happy and all of that. But that is something that is going on, and we're going to see if that is actually the case or not. But I'm about to reveal this particular person in terms of our mystery guest number one. It is none other than Eva Perón. That is right. Eva Perón is mystery guest number one. So Eva Perón is our first mystery guest. And of course, she was over there in the country of Argentina. So Eva Perón is our first mystery guest in terms of clues and all of that. And speaking of folks that we've been having the pleasure of talking to and having as mystery guests and seeing their pictures and all, before we give you some more clues and reveal our next mystery guest, we're going to let you hear some more music from Layla Zoe. That's right. Layla Zoe was definitely featured on this particular episode. And of course, we had a great interview with her, and it was definitely very interesting viewpoints that she shared and all of that. But right now, let's check out Layla Zoe and some of her music, and then I'll come back with the other mystery guests as well. But right now, let's check out a little bit of Layla Zoe and what Layla Zoe is all about, because I know a number of you may be interested in knowing more and more about Layla Zoe and who Layla Zoe is and all of that. So we're going to see about getting Layla Zoe on and see about y'all checking out Layla Zoe and her music. And this one is entitled Gemini Heart. So we're looking forward to letting y'all check out Gemini Heart and all of that. So that's getting ready to come on in just a matter of a minute or so. And there we go. That is Gemini Heart.
To me. Like you really care. Oh, but I can see you, baby. Kiss on her long brown hair. Why do you hurt me so? Oh, don't you know that I love you? Yes, I do. Come around when it's convenient for you. On those days she's not around, when you're feeling so blue, then you tell me, oh, that you'll always be my friend until the end. Can't you see that you're tearing me apart? I know you're lying to me, and it breaks my heart. Oh, Lord, am I awake? Ask myself that every day, 'cause I'm just a strong, sensitive, strong kind of woman. Just a Gemini heart. Oh. I'm just so tired of playing with you. Don't you know I want you? And you want me to. Why do you hurt me so? Oh, don't you know? Why do you hurt me so? Don't you know? Why do you hurt me so? Oh, don't you know? Don't you know? That I love you.
One of our earlier contestants. That's right, one of the earlier folks that had been used as a mystery guest in the past and everything along that line. So I was showing you one of the earlier guests so you know how this works and everything, because that was an earlier guest, Mr. Kenyatta, from an earlier show that was on the background when I came back up and all of that. But we still got another mystery guest for today that we want y'all to know as well. So definitely keeping that in mind. And I'm about to reveal some of those clues about the other mystery guests, and hopefully y'all will be able to figure out who that person is and all of that, because we still got a few more minutes to go before having to bring up a couple of other things. And of course, I know the Lawyer's Den, I believe, is coming up later on this afternoon and all on this particular Wednesday. And I'm sure that they've got a number of things that they are interested in talking about as well, as they always have a lot of very fascinating conversations with the different things that they do and the different conversations that go on in their lives and the different decisions that are coming down and all of that. So I know that they are always keeping track of a number of things and are always having fascinating things going on with the way that they are going and everything along that line. So definitely we're about to give you some more clues about some of the folks that you might be interested in terms of our other mystery guests. So about to reveal some of the clues about our mystery guests from the United States. Because like I said, try to have somebody usually from the international scene as well as somebody that is more out of the places here in terms of the national or the United States scene. So definitely this next guest and everybody, hopefully you folks are listening and paying attention to clues and all of that. But we're going to reveal some stuff about our next mystery guest and all of that, because he had some great quotes and everything. One of the things that he said was that black people need some peace, white people need some peace, and we're going to have to fight. We're going to have to struggle. We're going to have to struggle relentlessly to bring about some peace. So he was saying that definitely peace was going to be needed because the people that are asking for peace, they're a bunch of megalomaniac warmongers, and they don't even understand what peace means. And by the way, he was an activist and a deputy chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party back in the 1960s. So that's another clue about this particular person as well. And he studied law and used his knowledge to watch for police brutality cases with the NAACP and the Black Panther Party. And after joining the Black Panthers in the 1968, he rose to the ranks quickly after organizing peace among Chicago's most notorious street gangs. So he definitely had a reputation of being able to work with those street gangs in the Chicago area. And he worked to form a rainbow coalition. So he was using that term even before Jesse and all that on the streets by appealing to the gang's desire to get out of poverty. So that's definitely one of the things about him. And the FBI had opened a 4,000-page file on the person who was next in line as the Black Panthers chief of staff. Unfortunately, this person who was very young, the 21-year-old, would never get to see the appointment as he was set up and assassinated in an FBI raid on December 4th, 1969. And I know my good friend Curtis Gatewood mentioned that on our time of having him on Blog Talk Radio and Straight Talk with Dean and Mark on this past Monday. So I know he definitely referenced that person. So if y'all go really quickly and go listen to that episode, you might be able to figure out who I'm talking about and all of that. And by the way, it says an FBI informant named William O'Neill set up a raid against the Black Panther Party at his Chicago apartment, and he at the time lived there with his pregnant wife, who gave birth some 4 weeks after his death. And a civil lawsuit was later filed on behalf of the survivors and the relatives of both this person and Clark, was resolved in 1982 by a settlement of $1.85 million. And given revelations about the illegal COINTELPRO program and documents associated with the killings, scholars now widely consider his death an assassination under the FBI's initiative. And he was born on August 30th, 1948, in present-day Summit, Illinois, and grew up in Maywood. Matter of fact, a friend of mine from college was definitely part of that Maywood area as well, and that is a suburb of Chicago. His parents had moved north from Louisiana as part of a great migration of African Americans during that time in history. And as a youth, he was gifted both in the classroom and athletically, and he hoped to play center field for the New York Yankees. So he was hoping to play baseball career, but that did not happen. He also became active as in the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, and assumed leadership of his West Suburban Branch's Youth Council. And by the way, some people have mentioned him in song. Rick Ross mentions him in his song Powers That Be on the album Rather You Than Me. So he's mentioned in that song. And this other artist mentioned him on a song entitled Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. So he's definitely been mentioned in a few songs and all of that. So definitely that is a little bit about our next guest of honor in terms of a mystery guest. Don't know if anybody's going to be able to figure out who that is or not, but we're going to see how good y'all are in terms of being able to guess what that is and everything. So that is another clue about this other mystery guest. But before I reveal that mystery guest, let's talk about some of the things that happen here on this great network and everything, IBMTV.tv, the international broadcast media.
What you're watching? Check out Podcasters Thursday live on IBM TV. Panel discussions with some of the best podcasters, teaching you how to start up your own successful show and learning about those who are successful in the world of podcasting, only on IBM TV.
Well, actually, that is one of the great shows that is coming up here and everything, and that'll be here on it tomorrow. That's right. Podcasters Thursday will be here tomorrow. And, of course, they did a number of other shows that I am involved with that are on this network as well, because you can catch the radio show with Marc Lee on Mondays as well. So that's definitely some of the things that goes on regularly, and definitely there is some great programming that happens here on a regular basis. As they did say, the Lawyer's Den is one of them. So let's check out what the Lawyer's Den is all about. And like I said, we're going to reveal that other person that is our mystery guest and everything. So definitely it is somebody from the world of history and all of that. So about to reveal our other mystery guest. So hopefully folks will know who this particular person is and know a little bit about their history as well, because you know there are a number of great mystery guests, and we love showing you these mystery guests on a regular basis when we're able to bring them up and give you a little bit of history and all of that. So our mystery guest right now is none other than, and I see that Tim Sohn has popped in as well. So always glad to see Tim pop in and everything. So I'm here to reveal our mystery guest and then have Tim come in and say a couple of words as well. The mystery guest is none other than Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton is a well-known civil rights figure and all of that. So our two mystery guests were Fred Hampton and Eva Perón. So definitely glad to have them as our mystery guests. But right now, get ready to have we got Tim and the giraffe popping in. So the giraffe is popping in and all of that. So the giraffe is over here just grooving along and all of that. So God, we're glad to have a giraffe pop in on an online dinner party, even though I don't know what the giraffe wanted for dinner today. Because like I said, I'm not even sure what giraffes eat. I think they eat grass and other things along that line. But it's always good to have a giraffe pop in and share their wisdom and their knowledge. So what do giraffes eat, Mr. Giraffe?
That is a very good question. I guess I haven't eaten in a while. I have no idea what they eat.
The giraffe is hungry. The giraffe has not had anything to eat in a few days. So that's just incredible. The giraffe is sitting there going like, I'm on a giraffe fast. We didn't even know giraffes could go on a fast. But apparently the giraffe is having a giraffe fast.
Yes, according to the Google, giraffes eat leaves and twigs
Okay.
of a cacaya, mimosa, and wild apricot trees.
Wow. Wait a minute. You said mimosa. That's a drink. So they're over there getting drunk. The giraffes are getting drunk. That's just wrong.
You didn't know that giraffes do that, did you?
I did not know that. I did not know giraffes had like that whole thing. I was wondering why the last time I saw a giraffe in a zoo, and it's been a while since I've been to a zoo, the giraffe was swaying a little bit to the left and to the right, kind of the way that this giraffe that Tim brought is doing. So I did not know that giraffe swayed. And now we got an elf going on as well. So the elf made way for the giraffe. So the elves, I know they oftentimes get a little bit of that, Santa eggnog. So I know that they nip a little.
Oh, I love eggnog. Do you like eggnog, Mark?
I do like eggnog.
Now I want some. I want eggnog and a mimosa.
You bought eggnog and a mimosa. Wow. I thought maybe you were going to send me an eggnog all the way down here to North Carolina from up there in the Northeast. I was waiting for the door to knock.
Here, have one.
All right. I can have my eggnog now. It's always great to have eggnog and everything. I still cannot get over the fact that you had Dana Bentz, Miss StreamYard, on your show and everything. So she was over there.
My God. Yes, so grateful. She was such an amazing guest. And I've been on her shows before, the 2 Cents with Bentz show and StreamYard Spotlight.
Okay.
So it was great to have her in the guest seat this time. And so many people came and, showed their support. And I saw your comment there also, Mark, so really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Saw that she popped in and definitely let her know that I'm a big fan of StreamYard. My friend Zach is trying to get a StreamYard account and everything. So I was hoping that I was going to be able to get him in there so he could win that free StreamYard account, but that didn't quite work. So I know that they're communicating via hopefully Twitter and Facebook and a number of other sources so that he can get lined up to start his own StreamYard. And I did tell him about your class because you've got a class coming up. And you've taught a number of classes for folks that are interested in live streaming, but you've got another one coming up in January, or is it February?
Yes. No, it's starting on January 18th, and it's going to be very similar to the program that you were in, Mark. A slight twist on the name. It's going to be called Survive and Rise with Live Video. Still for people who want to launch their own show, or they're early on in their live streaming journey. And the biggest difference is your round of the class was 2 months long, which
Right.
worked at the beginning of coronavirus. But this time we're doing it as 1 month. So people who want to launch their own show in just 4 weeks. Excited to relaunch in a slightly different format. And you were such an awesome student, and here you are live like every day, Mark.
That's right. Now it seems like I'm doing stuff on a regular basis. I've got my several shows on IBM TV. So I've got the online dinner party, which you've popped into, and then I've got the radio show with Mark Lee, as well as Mullins Music and Memories. And then I'm oftentimes helping friends with their shows. So Zach has got funk music with Zach. He's got funk from the front seat, but that may be taking a hiatus for a while or migrating to some other things along that line. And then he's also got, we've got a show about gamers, so video game people, and that's on Thursday. So I pop in on that on a regular basis as well. So there are a number of shows that are on the network. And of course, I try to help folks that are doing their things. I love popping in on your show, you and Brian's, before the online dinner party, whether that's Voice Your Vibes or whether that's the Saturday shout outs. But definitely I love popping in on any of those that I'm able to, because y'all think that I have great energy, but I love y'all's energy as well as the energy of some of the people that you have introduced me to, like Raquel, like Wendy, like the e-commerce queen, Miss Veronica, and a number of other folks. Oh, can't forget Russ. Russ is another great person that has popped into my show that I met through you and Brian. So there are definitely some amazing folks and some amazing energy that is shared by all of these folks that are using things like LinkedIn and StreamYard and a number of other platforms and everything. So I'm just glad to call you a brother and a friend, and to meet some new brothers and sisters and everything.
Yes, likewise. The feeling is mutual, Mark. And it's so awesome during these last, whatever it's been, 9 months. How many people have we met online that we probably wouldn't have met, in circumstances before COVID, right? Like, just the community of people that have gotten together, especially in the live streaming world and social media. Yeah, right? Do you agree?
Yeah, so it's incredible the ways that we've met these different folks and everything like that. And you're right, there's so many incredible people that we've had the pleasure of meeting that we would not, as you said, have met in person, because we'd probably be busy with doing the different jobs. But the virus has got us all in home and learning new skills. I did see, because I made an announcement about it earlier, that apparently the current vice president is going to take the vaccine on Friday. So apparently he's going to take the vaccine. I'm guessing he's going to take it on TV and everything. So I'm guessing it's going to become a TV spectacle. So we're going to see what happens with that. But I was watching the news releases go by, and I was like, oh, Pence is going to be the first one. And wait a minute. And then I thought about that. I was like, isn't the big boss supposed to take it first? But I guess he didn't want to take it. He's going to delegate it down to the other person.
I'm leaving that one alone.
I know that's right. But yeah, he's delegated, and I don't blame you for leaving it alone whatsoever. That is a very smart move on your part and everything. But yeah, we will see whether he's on TV or not, because I saw that the TV came out here as well. The TV popped up and everything. So you have all those really cool filters and everything. So that was really great. I did learn, one of the things that you taught me on the streaming class that we took and everything is be prepared for the unexpected. So we had an unexpected moment earlier today. I was expecting to have a group of youth come into the online dinner party and do like a whole youth forum and all of that. But, the things got out of control where they are. I think they're in Colorado or something like that. So we've rescheduled them, I believe, for January of 2021. But fortunately, I had done an interview earlier with Layla Zoe. So even though it was an audio interview, I just put her picture up, and we had like the interview going on and things of that nature. So I had a backup plan in case something had happened that was not in the forecast. So that's what I did. I went and said, hey, I need to figure out something to do to fill up the hours. And I did an interview earlier this morning with a young lady who is a blues artist out of the Netherlands. So they got to hear a whole interview of the Netherlands thing because I was prepared with a backup plan. So I've actually got a couple of evergreens, I think they call them, shows and everything. She was an immediate evergreen, and I thought that it would be a great interview, but I've also had some other ones in case these things happen in the not too distant future or in the far off future that something goes wrong, I've got a couple of backup interviews or backup things that I have recorded that I can do the old plug and play. That's what I'm starting to call it, is the plug and play. So like I said, I remember that you teaching me that as one of the lessons was to, have some backup stuff and everything in preparation in case things don't quite go the way you want them to. So we had an incident even today, a couple of days before Christmas. My Christmas gift to myself was having a backup plan.
That is awesome, Mark. That is so cool. I actually produced an event recently where we had a number of components of the event. It was actually a Christmas tree lighting, a virtual Christmas tree lighting. Mm-hmm. And we were having some audio issues with when we had the camera on the officials who were there to welcome everyone at some other points. But we had other components of the program, like Santa was riding through town on the fire truck. So we had a Santa cam going through town. We had the Christmas tree lighting. And then we also had a recorded video of a school choir.
Wow.
So we were lucky that we had multiple components, because if we didn't, we would have been in trouble. So,
and we've actually, I think I mentioned to you on the show with Brian and them that I had a meeting last week where they're trying to do a virtual Kwanzaa, and we're trying to see about getting all the places and the people in order for exactly that reason, because they were of the opinion, and I agree with them, that it was probably going to be better to do like my friend Crystal Myrick did, and have in that kind of environment stuff that was already pre-done, and we just kind of put it together versus trying to do it live and in person, because like I said, something might happen. So we're in the process now of getting some of the clips of folks, whether it's them lighting their Kwanzaa candles or whether it's them talking about why that holiday is important to them, or whether it's them even doing like some demonstrations. Because I know when they've done the live Kwanzaa, there's been like some quilters that have done things in the past. There've been some seminars. There've been like some cook demonstrations. So we're trying to get all of those people lined up this week and maybe the early part of next week, so that we can all be one cohesive event and not try to do it as a live, in the true sense of live, way of doing it, because those can be real difficult. I've learned that even from doing a couple of live festivals, that sometimes the live aspect of the festival is the hardest part, because I know even when I did the Eno and Cinefest, there were parts of it that had been pre-recorded, including my part, because I did like a history narrative of Cinefest history, but I had sent them that audio sometime back. So it was great hearing my voice, but not having to worry about doing it live and in person right then. So they'd already recorded me, and I recorded me and then sent it to them, and they interjected it into there. But I've seen some live stuff going on, and you're going like, is the band ever going to tune up? Are they ever going to play?
Yeah. I think my best, like the situation I like the best is if you have an event where you have pre-recorded videos, but if you can have like a live MC, like introducing them.
Right.
As long as hopefully all their technology works out okay, but at least then you have fewer chances of, when you have so many different components,
right.
The more live components you add, the more opportunities there are for, I don't want to say failure, but technology issues,
Technology issues. And you had some technology issues earlier today, and I think of you and Brian as being Brian, the greatest pros and everything. And I'm sitting there going like, Brian is having a hard time with his filters and everything else. But like I said, even the best of us have those moments. Like I said, I mentioned what happened to me earlier, and I've seen a couple of times with you've had it. Shree has had some moments. So even the most consummate pros have their moments and everything.
Yeah, you can only control so much, right?
Right, exactly. So what are you going to be doing? And I'm going to wrap everything up over here. I'm going to play some Layla, and hopefully you can stick around and hear a little bit of Layla. But what are you going to be doing for Christmas? And that's next week. So what are you and the kiddios, as well as your wife, doing for Christmas? Are y'all going anywhere, or are y'all going to be there in your part of the world, or are you going to go visit like someplace else, or are you going to prepare a big Christmas dinner, or are you going to be doing the socially distanced, just the four of y'all? Was it three of y'all? Four of y'all?
Yeah, we I think we're just gonna hang out at home. Yeah, we're just gonna have a very Corona Christmas, the four of us, and I'm sure we'll Zoom or FaceTime or whatever thing we use to talk to my parents. And my sister only lives a half an hour away now, but I think they're all gonna get together. But she has a small house, and I don't want to push it because there's four of us plus them,
Plus whatever they bring and everything along that line.
Yeah.
Well, I was glad that you were able to pop in. And like I said, I'm going to wrap it up with a little music from Layla Zoe and everything. So definitely, hopefully you'll get a chance to get your dancing on while we play this song that Layla Zoe did entitled Wild Horses. So knowing you might even find a picture of a wild horse going on. But we're going to put on a little Layla Zoe and the Wild Horses.
Nay.
Yeah, waiting for them horses.
Childhood living is easy to do. Things you wanted, how about them for you? Restless honey, you know who I am, and I cannot let you slide through my hands. Wild horses call and drag me away. Wild horses call and drag me away. I watched you suffer, a dull and aching pain, and now you decided to show me the same. No sweeping exits or off stage lines could make me feel better or treat you unkind. Wild horses come and drag me away. I know I dreamed you sand in the light. I have my freedom, but I don't have much time. Faith has been broken. Tears must be cried. So let's do some living. Oh, after we die. Wild horses come and drag me away. Wild horses, we'll ride them someday. Oh, wild horses couldn't drag me away. Wild horses, we'll ride them someday.
That was those wild horses. So, like I said, I think they wrote a song about you. They had a song about the wild horse. So there's the wild horse right there. What did you think about the song written about you, wild horse? I see that we've got a wild horse in the house. So, what was your thoughts about having a song written about you, wild horse?
That was a great song. I was digging
that's
it.
a great song, and I think the wild horses would dig that song as well. Because I know I'm going to wrap this bad boy up and everything. But, you know, we're actually in the middle. I don't know if y'all in the middle of one, but we're in the middle of a lockdown. So if I'm going to go anywhere, I've got to go between now and 10. Because after 10 o'clock, you're supposed to be in your house and not out. So
really? You have a curfew?
10, yeah, we've got a curfew. We've got a curfew in North Carolina. Wow. We're under curfew.
Yeah, we don't have a curfew. And our school district is the only local one that still has the option for all in school. Although tomorrow there's no school because we're getting almost 2 feet of snow between today and tomorrow.
Well, there's that alleged snow. We had rain, so I didn't know whether snow was a real thing or not. But no, they actually, I think they said I'm not sure about Durham where I'm at, but Wake County, I think they're going to all online classes next year and everything. So, I mean, in the winter session, they're going to go to all online is what I read somewhere earlier today. So definitely we're under like some things that have actually seen numbers not going the direction that they would like. So hopefully that vaccine will come and it'll slow things down and people will actually remember to wear their mask. Because if they would wear their mask, then things would be much better and everything. Because like I said, I know that if I decide to go out, I've got my mask. So I'm prepared. So I've got my mask and I'm ready to go out and all of that. But the rest of the folks need to put on their mask as well so we can get over this thing and everything faster. What's your old favorite expression? Now more than ever?
That's right. Now more than ever.
Now more than ever. Exactly. So thanks, Tim, for popping in. Always great to see you and always glad to have you pop in on my show, just like I like to pop in on you and Brian's. And one of these days I'm going to pop in on you and Jim. I know you keep sending me the invitation, but I think I'm usually doing this or that. But one of these times I will not be doing this or that, and we'll pop in on the Tim and Jim, the Rhyming Show.
Yes, the Rhyming Show. Tim and Jim Show, otherwise known as the Rhyming Show.
The Rhyming Show. Well, you know, you got that advantage. I can't think of Mark and Bark. There is no name like Bark, so I can't think of a name that would actually work with Bark. Mark and Dark. Well, no, that wouldn't work either.
Yeah, I don't know.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Tim. Glad that you were able to pop in, and I'm getting ready to throw on one of these announcements about one of our other shows here on IBM TV, and then get the heck on out of here. But I think, believe it or not, I've got a Zoom meeting to go to, as if there's not enough Zooms in the world. But it seems like every time I turn around, there's another meeting or another this or that. We just live in the Zoom world.
That's right. That's right. All right, Mark, thank you so much. It was great to see you.
Good seeing you as well. Always good seeing you. Always great to have that positive energy of yours. And I definitely appreciate your support in helping me with the different things that I do. And you and Brian are always giving me good shout outs and encouraging folks to check out what I'm doing, just like I like to encourage folks to check out what you're doing. So definitely appreciate you big time.
You too. Bye, Mark.
All right. Cool. And don't forget that tomorrow we've got the Gamers Den. So I'm going to let y'all check out about that. And then I'm going to get on out of here. But the Gamers Den will be on tomorrow between the hours of 1 and 3.